Are there any statements by honourable members? And I'll call the member for Clare.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today I wish to recognise the remarkable team of volunteers at Mudgee Museum. This dedicated group works tirelessly to preserve and share the rich history of the Mudgee area through an impressive collection of over 60,000 items. The museum's collection is housed in several historic buildings, including a mid-19th century hotel, an early 20th century church and a replica slab hut. I recently visited the museum to discuss the Federal Volunteers grant it's received, and I'm very pleased that this funding will support the purchase of an overhead scanner, which will significantly streamline the digitisation of their extensive archives. The museum is operated by a team of over 30 passionate volunteers from Mudgee Historical Society. The hard-working executive of the Society includes President Barry Wells, Vice President Sue England, Treasurer Thelma Mears and Secretary Heather McCormick. I met with them on my recent visit, as well as Barry's wife, Faye. On behalf of our community, I wish to acknowledge and thank all of the Historical Society members and museum volunteers for their hard work, passion and dedication. Thanks to their efforts, the museum continues to expand and its exhibits go from strength to strength. The vital work of the Historical Society in operating the Mudgee Museum preserves our local and national heritage, and the museum itself has become a well-known and much-loved destination and drawcard for visitors to the region and locals alike. Congratulations to the team at Mudgee Museum. Thank you.
Call the member for Lingouri.
Thank you, Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I take the opportunity to remember and honour the life and contributions of Elliott McAdam, my close friend and former Labor Party member of the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly. Born an Elliott in the Northern Territory, he was a man who dedicated his life to his beloved home region, the Barkly. Throughout the 1990s, Elliott served as the General Manager of the Jalalakari Council Aboriginal Corporation in Tennant Creek, where he worked tirelessly to improve the lives of people and his community. His leadership and advocacy led him to win the Barkly seat for the Labor Party in the 2001 election, where he served 2 terms. In 2005, he was appointed the Minister for Local Government and Housing in a Labor government in the Northern Territory. He resigned from the portfolio in 2008. There are many things that he certainly left, and his recognition of his significant service to Barkly, the Tennant Creek and the Northern Territory. He was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in 2015. His reputation as one of the tireless, deep compassion and unwavering commitment to make his home a better place for all. He was a fierce advocate for his community and oversaw many positive changes in the region. I extend my deep condolences to his wife Barbara, his daughters Nara and Arilla, and his grandson Nathaniel, Sean and James. Vale, Elliott McAdam.
Call a member for Goldstein.
Speaker, it's an absolute priority of government to ensure the safety of its citizens, and as the Director-General of Security, Mike Burgess, has made clear, the lower the social cohesion, the higher the risk to safety. One of the first decisions of President Donald Trump in 2017 was a blanket ban on refugees from 7 countries that he described as a source of radical Islamic terror from entering the US. More than 60,000 visas were revoked and protests erupted at airports across the country. I was at Chicago Airport that week as a reporter amid chaos and confusion as people with green cards returned home from holidays or business trips and were detained and prevented from re-entering the US. Recently, the former president has threatened to restore the ban, which was shelved by the Biden administration, and include individuals from Gaza. We aren't bringing in anyone from Gaza, Syria, Somalia, Yemen or Libya, or anywhere else that threatens our security, he said. Under no circumstances should we bring thousands of refugees from Hamas-controlled terrorist areas like Gaza to America. Entrants to Australia require rigorous and fair, sensitive assessment, and if we're to restore social cohesion, all of us must watch our words and not adopt the politics of hate. Thank you, Speaker.
Call a member for Adelaide.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, the 18th of August 2024, I was proud to attend a solemn and profound Vietnam Veterans Day service at the Torrens Parade Ground in my electorate of Adelaide. Yesterday marked the 58th anniversary of the Battle of Long Tan, and we collectively paused to remember the service and sacrifice of the 60,000 brave men and women who served in the Australian Defence Force during the Vietnam War, and of course their families. We also acknowledge the services of our Vietnamese veterans who served alongside Australians during the war, many of whom have made their tremendous contribution to our local community after migrating to Australia following the war. I'd also like to congratulate the South Australian veterans community, particularly Mr Ian Smith, who is the chair of the RSL, the state branch of and the state branch for the Anzac Day Committee, for organising such a respectful and wonderful event and well-attended service yesterday. We also pause to remember the 523 Australians who made that ultimate sacrifice, Deputy Speaker, for our nation during the Vietnam War. And of course, I was very privileged and honoured to lay a wreath on behalf of my electorate so we can remember those great men and women who served in Vietnam.
Call member for Kooyong.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today to highlight a remarkable initiative taking place on the streets of Kooyong, our community's English Corner. This regular event is a shining example of grassroots community engagement in which Chinese migrants and local residents come together to exchange languages, culture and friendship in a warm and welcoming way. For our Chinese newcomers, English Corner offers an invaluable opportunity to practice their spoken English, to build their confidence and to integrate more fully into Australian society. At the same time, it provides our local residents with a unique chance to learn Chinese and to gain deeper insights into the rich cultural heritage that our Chinese community brings to Kooyong. But this initiative is more than just about language learning. It's also about fostering mutual understanding, breaking down barriers and promoting social cohesion. In coming together in this way, we're not just sharing words, we are building bridges and we are creating a stronger and more unified community. I commend the organisers and all of the participants of the Kooyong English Corner for their dedication to making our home a place where diversity is celebrated and a cultural exchange thrives. Their efforts are a testament to the power of community-driven initiatives in enriching our society.
Call a member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. My family was blessed to find refuge in Australia, and after our homeland was torn apart by war. I know too well the deep scars that conflict leaves on people's lives. Last week, we reflected on a moment that profoundly impacted my community. 3 years ago, Kabul fell to the Taliban, leading to the collapse of Afghanistan's Republican government. In the weeks that followed, Australia and other coalition partners worked to evacuate over 123,000 people from Kabul airport. Watching those desperate scenes as people scrambled onto flights for safety left me in tears. Countless others were not as fortunate and were left behind, forced to make the dangerous journey into Pakistan or Iran. Every day, I hear from families in my community with loved ones whose lives remain in limbo, denied the right to work or study. For those who supported democracy, returning to Afghanistan means facing arrest or even death. As we commemorate this occasion, let us thank the men and women of the ADF who helped evacuate Kabul and remember those left behind, enduring the harsh realities of the Taliban rule.
Call a member for Page.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge and thank John Walker from Sapphire Beach, who was recently awarded a Pro Ecclesia et Pontifice Award for his services to St Augustine's Catholic Church and the wider Lismore Diocese. John has been involved in the parish for decades. He is always seen to be going above and beyond and to positively impact those around him and provide valuable assistance to the parish school's office. John played a strong role in creating the parish's out-of-school hours care service at the primary school, a service that is still running and incredibly popular. He's also offered invaluable expertise to the parish school's office on numerous occasions. The Pro Ecclesia et Pontifice Medal, translated from Latin, means for the Church and the Pope. It was established in 1888 by Pope Leo XIII and is the highest commendation from the Holy Father to members. In a ceremony at the Coffs Harbour Parish, Bishop Greg Homing presented John with the award. This is a strong testament to John's continued dedication and invaluable services to the church and the community. I'd like to thank and congratulate John on receiving the Pro Ecclesia et Pontifice Medal for his efforts towards the church. And I know that John's wife Jenny and his daughters Gina and Diana and families are very proud of him.
Call the member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today is known as a day that's called Equal Pay Day. Now, this is a theoretical day, it's basically 50 days into the financial new year, and this is the number of days that Australian women must work to earn the same as men did last financial year on average. This is the stats, and it's a tangible way to demonstrate what we need to do to close the gender gap. And this is exactly what the Labor government is working on. One of the ways that we're doing this is our historic expansion of paid parental leave. From the 1st of July, parents will receive 22 weeks of paid parental leave, up from 20. This scheme will continue to expand each year until it reaches 26 weeks in 2026. That's when families will receive around $24,000 in government-funded paid parental leave. This means more support as parents take out time to care for their newborn child. Labor's changes will benefit around 180,000 Australian families each year. In my electorate of Swan, nearly 2,000 people received paid parental leave last year. That's 2,000 families and children in Swan that benefited from greater choice, security and flexibility, balancing work and care. Working shouldn't be a barrier to parenting, and parenting shouldn't be a barrier to working.
Call the member for Barrow.
Deputy Speaker, on Saturday our community came together to clean up the graffiti which has been such an unfortunate feature of Pennant Hills, Thornley and Normanhurst. Local residents, shop owners and police agree that the level of graffiti across these communities is unprecedented. Something had to be done. So I convened a graffiti busting army with Alistair Henskins MP and Councillor Sally Ann McClelland. I want to give a special shout out to Roger Norman and his team of Mark Hedges, Ross Wharton, Colin Brunkner and Duk-Soo Park from Turramurra Rotary. Roger organised the logistics of the clean-up. He trained our volunteers. He's truly an inspiration. Together with the volunteers, we donned gloves and masks and got down to work fixing the ugly mess that the vandals had made. I want to acknowledge all the volunteers from the campaign. From Hillcrest Uniting Church, there was Brian Wilcoxon, Jenny Treesize, Mike Little, Jill and Jim Mean, Lee Lowe, David Firth, Callan Sand, Sue Wilcoxon, Misho and Julie Lubser. Big thanks to Maggie Morris, the Thorpe family, Isabella Chen, the Musico family, Joseph Habcook, Rose Gray, Isabella Skelly, Robert Jocelyn, Karen Awad, the Riley family, Emil Boshov, Gabby Samia, Astrid Pickup, Surin Jung, Jasmine Mazidi, Sahara Kaur, Kira Rodriguez, Tina Faber, Deborah Egan-Wiggins, Maria Ferraro, Umil Detruna, Brian Norman, Ryan Birdcutt and Stephanie Brown. Local businesses also helped out with Our Hair For You, Ondo, Wooden Mill and Well-Versed Homes, as well as Dulux, Southern Cleaning Supplies, Kennards Thornley, Inspirations Hornsby, Unipro and Bunnings Thornley sponsoring. Thank you to our wonderful community.
Call the member for Hasler.
Each of us are leaders in our communities. Current events around the world and our multi-faith communities in Hasluck and around Australia serve to remind us of the need to model religious tolerance. Everyone in our society has the right to express further and celebrate their religious and spiritual beliefs, and it's the duty of this Parliament to ensure that within this cultural sphere, which includes religious expression, every person feels and is demonstrably free to follow their own personal spiritual journey. These rights always need to be managed and balanced against other rights, of course, freedom of expression and the right to gender equality, for example. In the Minister's speech, which we often repeat at citizenship ceremonies, we highlight the fact that Australia is one of the most successful multicultural societies. This is true, but it is not a given. It is something we need to continually strive for, protect and defend. A commitment to multiculturalism includes a commitment to a nation that is multi-faith. It involves both respecting and valuing each and every religion, be that Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Judaism and 100 others. It involves respecting beliefs which assure a deity, which are now held by many people. If we understand each of us are on a journey and we turn our back on dogmatism and intolerance, we have the best chance of preserving the multiculturalism that has made Australia the great place that it is today. Here we need to lead on this.
Call the member for Moncrief.
Well, it was an honour to attend a Vietnam Veterans Day memorial service at Nerang in my electorate. I also extend my respect to all those who attended the Nerang RSL service and acknowledge the service and sacrifices they made as veterans of the 10-year Vietnam conflict. On Long Tan Day, we honour those who served in the Vietnam War, their families for their service and their sacrifice to our nation. I acknowledge the Vietnam Veterans Federation of Queensland, the support group and the Men's Shed for the work they do to support Vietnam veterans in my community. I thank President Peter Handy, Secretary Peter Cameron, OAM, and President of the Gold Coast Sub-Branch, Andy Bryson, for the moving service and all the veterans and their families who attended. For some time, 2,500 former national servicemen have been campaigning to receive the Republic of Vietnam Campaign Medal, where a serviceman must have completed a minimum period of 181 days, either continuous or aggregated, unless killed in active service, wounded in action, captured or later released or escaped. And before now, this has not been applied to those suffering in silence with PTSD. But very recently, Vietnam veterans who did not serve for 181 days can apply for the medal if they can prove they were wounded in action, supporting it with medical evidence. And so I want to thank Senator Paul Scar for his advocacy so that this change may be made. And finish with this. As his eyes filled with tears, I pin the RVCM to the already full lapel of Mr John Crane, Vietnam veteran, to properly acknowledge his service and sacrifice to the Commonwealth.
Call the member for Blair.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On Saturday the 3rd of August, Ipswich was a sea of colour for Queer Switch 2024. Queer Switch is Ipswich's own Pride Festival and a fun family day celebrating inclusion, diversity in the local LGBTQIA+ community, along with family, friends and supporters. It's a terrific event with a carnival atmosphere featuring live entertainment, art shows, markets and even a puppy pageant. The event was the brainchild of proud Ipswich locals Julie Herbert and Rachel Vickery from Pink Flamingo Productions, who are concerned about the high rates of suicide among young people struggling with their sexual identity and prejudice and the lack of events for the local community in Ipswich. That's why they organised the first ever Queer Switch last year, and I was very proud to open last year's event as well as this year's event and have a stall there. It was a huge success last year, and this year it was even bigger than ever. I want to recognise Rach and Jules for their vision, passion and courage. This important event provides a safe space to celebrate and raise awareness of the community and their achievements. It contributes to a vibrant, healthy and sustainable local economy in Ipswich and puts our city on the map. I want to congratulate local organisations and businesses for getting involved and supporting the event. I'm proud to be part of a party in a government and a local community that values equality, diversity and respect for all people. As Alan Roebuck said in the local Ipswich News, after all, love is love.
Call member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I thought it would be timely to make a few comments about multiculturalism, and I believe, given where I'm from, I have some contributions to make. I said in my maiden speech, the electorate of Nichols is, I believe, one of the most successful examples of multiculturalism in the world. People from all over have made their way to this region, often coming with nothing, and they have made extraordinary lives. We've had waves of migration, even going back from Southern Europe, even going back pre-war, and an Albanian mosque was built in Shepparton in the late 1950s, and there are a number of different faith groups and a number of different nationalities that come and be part of the bigger story, which is Greater Shepparton. They came often because there was work available. I also said in my maiden speech that my observation as a member of this community is that we seem to do better when we celebrate each other's different cultural identity, but moreover embrace each other's humanity, the humanity being a stronger bond between us than any divisions that attempt to be amplified by race, gender, sexual orientation or religious view. I think this multiculturalism, this great success that we've had, is threatened if we call each other names such as racist, make baseless allegations, and if we don't get security settings of immigration right. Long live multiculturalism in the Goulburn Valley.
The member's time has expired. I call a member for Boothby.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I was taught at school that Australia's highest peak is Mount Kosciuszko. Wrong. If you include the Australian territories, Big Ben on Heard Island is actually Australia's highest peak. And not only that, it's an active volcano. I recently attended the showing of a documentary, Ice and Fire, in my electorate of Boothby, about the beautiful Heard and McDonald Islands, situated 4,000 kilometres south of the Australian mainland. The title Ice and Fire refers to spectacular images of Big Ben spewing red-hot lava onto its pristine snow-covered slopes. These islands are UNESCO World Heritage listed and home to penguins, seals, petrels, albatross, and the surrounding waters are home to many unique cold water, deep water fish and marine life. The 2024 South Australian of the Year, adventurer Tim Jarvis, also spoke to a packed audience about the impact of climate change on the islands, rapid shrinking of glaciers, and the impact of the changing environment on the wildlife. In July this year, Minister Tanya Plibersek announced a massive extension of the protected waters around these islands, an extra 300,000 square kilometres of ocean. This is part of the Albanese Labor government's 30-30-30 commitment, 30% land, 30% oceans protected by 2030. I'd like to thank the Pew Charitable Trust for their work publicising the importance of protecting these islands, and Minister Plibersek for protecting our wonderful environment.
Call a member for more.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The ageing clubroom facilities at Fleur Frame Pavilion, located at McDonald Reserve in Padbury, are used by many local sporting clubs and community groups, including the Whitford Junior Football Club, Whitford Amateur Football Club, Whitford's Junior Cricket Club, Whitford Senior Cricket Club, Joondalup Bridge Club, and many other community groups. The facility was built more than 40 years ago, and the buildings are reaching their end of useful life. They are too small to accommodate the growth in population over 4 decades and do not meet contemporary building standards, such as for disability access. The cramped change room facilities are run down and inadequate to cope with the growth in popularity of women's sport. There is very limited storage space for sporting equipment, and the clubroom and kitchen facilities require modern refurbishment. A redevelopment of the facility needs to be placed on the agenda now, sooner rather than later, since it takes several years to complete the architectural design and building plans, conduct community consultation with stakeholders, and secure the necessary capital funding. For a project of this scale, it will require the local, state and federal levels of government to cooperate. I look forward to working proactively with the local community and the City of Joondalup to put this important project on the redevelopment agenda starting now.
Call a member for Lyons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, July 1 is a big day in Australia. In 1932, the Australian Broadcasting Commission began its first radio broadcast. On this day in 1949, Johnny Farner was born, joined in 1971 by Missy Elliott. In 1979 on this day, Sony sold the first Walkman. And on July 1, 2024, Australians saw a much-needed cost of living relief package with historic Labor tax cuts. Supporting Australians during these difficult times that we inherited from the Liberal Party is the centrepiece of the Albanese Labor government's time in office. On July 1, every single Australian taxpayer got a tax cut. 13.6 million Australians, 46,000 people in my own electorate of Lyons, and an average cut of $1,279 per person. And I'm happy to say, Deputy Speaker, that the majority of taxpayers got a bigger tax cut than they would have under the Liberal Party. That means a hard-working family with a household income of $120,000 between your mum and dad will receive an additional $45 on their payslip each week, every week, forever. On top of that, we are expanding on last year's energy relief package to ensure every household in Australia got support with the $300 off energy bills. And of course, we provided extra support through paid parental leave scheme, and the Fair Work Commission brought down new award rates. Deputy Speaker, under Labor, Australians have more jobs, higher wages and bigger tax cuts.
Call a member for Group.
Earning more, getting more of what they earn.
Keep them. Call a member for
Speaker,
Group.
I wish good luck to everyone competing in this weekend's Risdon Cup, the 60th anniversary of the Darling Downs great rugby competition taking place at Toowoomba Sports Ground this weekend. Speaker, I bring very sad news. There's only one Toowoomba team out of the 8 teams competing this weekend. Men's A grade, we have Dalby versus Gundawindi. All the money's on Dalby. But I want to point out the great, the mighty, the fantastic Toowoomba Rangers. I might have played for them once or twice. They came third this year, Speaker. So look, It was a great turnout. But the great chance for Toowoomba this weekend, Speaker, the Toowoomba Bears in the women's final playing against St George Roma. This is the first time, Speaker, Downs Rugby have played a 15-a-side season in the women's competition. It's been a great competition, a great show of strength for Downs Rugby. We're growing, we're getting better and better. B grade, the most important for some people, Dalby versus Gundy again, both teams going for the triple. And sadly, if I go to C grade, Dalby are playing Gatton. This could be three out of three for Dalby if things go bad for everybody else. But for Gatton, this is the first time in 11 years they've made the final. So great to see them back up at the top of the table. Speaker, I want to thank all of the sponsors, particularly RDO, who are getting right behind this event. Everyone who's going to turn up on the day, all the coaches and players for making this such a wonderful event. And I maintain my threat of another run in C grade sometime next year.
Call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I stand here today to congratulate the Surrey Park Swimming Club on 120 years of serving our community in Chisholm. Since 1904, the Surrey Park Swimming Club has been playing a vital role in teaching locals how to swim. Surrey Park Swimming Club started as a 100-metre hole in the ground after the excavation of clay for the local brickworks in Box Hill. Now they are the largest swimming club in Victoria and one of the oldest clubs still active in Australia. Surrey Park Swimming Club has survived wars, droughts and a pandemic. They've expanded beyond Box Hill and have opened a Learn to Swim centre and squad training pool on the border of Blackburn and Box Hill South. Many incredible swimmers learnt to swim at Surrey Park Swimming, including Olympians and world champions. The team at Surrey Park Swimming take their commitment to our community really seriously. They donate a portion of each swim school fee to their community access program for swimming, which is just wonderful. This program provides free swimming lessons to refugees and people experiencing financial hardship. They also provide free water safety talks to local kinders, early learning centres and primary and secondary schools. Thank you to the wonderful team at Surrey Park Swimming Club for all that you do for our community. Happy 120 years.
Call the member for Durack.
2024 marks 100 years of the Country Women's Association in WA, a fantastic milestone for a fantastic organisation. There are over 24 CWA branches in my electorate of Durack, which provides a space for women to come together and to share stories, also to fight and to advocate for our regional communities and to also share the odd recipe. In 2018, after WA Labor made significant cuts to regional education and threatened to close Moora College, the CWA joined the campaign to save the school and to reverse these cuts. This culminated in a rally that inspired a magnificent cartoon by Dean Alston. The cartoon depicted a squadron of the CWA militant wing firing scones and curried egg sandwiches at our state parliament. Classic Alston. Later that year, I proudly announced that the Coalition would provide $8.7 million of funding to refurbish that saved college. This is just one example of CWA's successful advocacy for regional communities. In May, I attended the Walkaway CWA Mother's Day morning tea and was gifted a copy of Women of Spirit, a centenary of WA stories. I had the great pleasure of being gifted to be me by Mrs Jean King, who is a CWA champion in my area. I have no doubt that their work will continue for the next 100 years. 100-year happy birthday.
Call the member for Corangamite.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As more people choose to call the Surf Coast, Bellarine and Geelong region home, the Albanese government is forging ahead with a construction blitz to ease congestion, deliver safer roads for motorists and boost recreational and hospital infrastructure. On Friday, we opened the Surf Coast Highway level crossing ahead of schedule, while construction of the South Geelong to Warm Ponds rail duplication will soon be complete, meeting many more trains on the line. The Albanese government is also progressing the Barwon Heads Road upgrade, with Stage 1 completed last year, 12 months ahead of schedule, and construction of the $250 million Stage 2 upgrade about to get underway. And we're delivering much-needed recreational facilities with a new highball centre in Armstrong Creek and indoor aquatic centres for North Bellarine and Surf Coast. Deputy Speaker, these facilities build on significant federal funding for black spot funding to upgrade dangerous roads, school upgrades, environmental initiatives to protect our wetlands and NBN upgrades to improve connectivity. Then there's our new urgent care clinic, the new Children's and Women's Hospital and the new local headspace for Armstrong Creek. Deputy Speaker, my electorate of Corangamite is growing rapidly and the Albanese government is delivering the infrastructure that our communities need to be safe, to be healthy and to lead successful lives.
Call a member for Lindsay.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have two golden girls in my electorate of Lindsay, Jess and Noemi Fox, who are proudly gold medalists and champions. I've known them both since they were little girls and now they've grown up to become inspiring women. Jess won 2 gold medals, one in the K1 Women's and one in the C1. And Noemi beat her big sister in the kayak cross to take out a gold medal. But not only are they wonderful Olympic champions, they are inspiring the next generation of young sports people coming through the ranks in Western Sydney. Jess and Noemi Fox have 2 proud parents, their dad Richard, who is Australian coach, and their very own coach, their mum Miriam, and they've been right behind them, as has our whole community been behind these 2 young women from the very day they started their great careers. Penrith Whitewater Stadium is an Olympic legacy built for the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, and that's where these 2 women have trained, as well as all of our Olympians, and that's where our future Olympians are training now too. We're so fortunate to have that stadium, and I'm glad that in 2019's election commitment I made further investment into future-proofing that stadium for future generations. Congratulations, girls. All of Penrith is behind you 100%.
I'll just remind the member not to stand until the time has expired, rather than 10 seconds before. Thank you. Member for Hunter.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise and congratulate Elizabeth Napoli for recently receiving the Volunteer Recognition Award from Gymnastics New South Wales. This award is for distinguished service to Gymnastics New South Wales community. Liz attended the 2023 Gymnastics New South Wales Annual Awards Night at Dalton House on Sydney Harbour earlier this year. Last year, Gymnastics New South Wales had close to 72,000 participants with more than 200 affiliated clubs. Volunteers are the lifeblood of sporting clubs and associations. Volunteers like Liz, who give their time to others, are a huge part of why it is possible for so many people to enjoy sports and develop their skills. From amongst all the volunteers serving the Gymnastics New South Wales community, Liz and 4 others were chosen to specially be recognised with a Volunteer Recognition Award. It is an exciting time to celebrate the success within gymnastics. The sport has become the 3rd most popular activity for children in New South Wales. Liz is recognised amongst the community as a powerhouse. She manages her volunteer role, contributing towards gymnastics for all, whilst also coordinating gymnastics at the PCYC Cessnock, helping improve and develop gymnasts within PCYC New South Wales, and so much more. Our community is very lucky to have you, Liz, and congratulations again, and thank you for everything you do with the kids all around our area. Thank you.
Call a member for Petrie.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Well, Deputy Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank every member of the Australian Defence Force. It's special for me. Last Tuesday, my family and I gathered at Duntroon to celebrate my eldest son, William's graduation from the Royal Military College. He's now graduated as a lieutenant. We couldn't be prouder of him. But I want to say a massive congratulations to the entire cohort who graduated last week as well. You have all shown extraordinary dedication, resilience and strength throughout your time at RMC Duntroon, and you should all be proud of yourselves for what you have achieved, especially as you enter the next journey of your lives. And for the Year 12s in my electorate, and obviously right around the country, who are nearing the end of their schooling and are unsure what they want to do, they might want to think about a career in the Australian Defence Force. Currently, there's many opportunities within both the Army, Air Force and Navy. In the Army, there's armoured vehicle crew drivers. Of course, in the Navy, there's sailors to man the upcoming nuclear-powered Virginia-class submarines. And of course, in the Air Force, there's crew to work there as well with refuelling planes and logistics. It's a great opportunity. You consider the ADF gap year, where you can just do 12 months and get a bit of a feel for it and travel and meet new friends and develop your skills. but you might just want to apply for 4 years. 4 years is not a long time. So get on to adfcareers.gov.au. Thank you.
Call a member for Higgins.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Clean indoor air is the missing link in reducing the risks posed by airborne threats like viruses, bushfire smoke and allergens. This pandemic would have had a completely different trajectory had indoor air quality standards been in place. It would have saved lives and livelihoods and maybe even prevented lockdowns. Wiping down surfaces and washing hands is fine if you have a pandemic of gastro, but that's not what we had. Treating indoor air like the water we drink is the key lesson of this pandemic. I was pleased to launch with Assistant Minister Jed Carney the Chief Scientist's report on clean indoor air. This work was commissioned by Jed with the support of the Minister for Industry and Science, Ed Husic. This report provides the evidence base to keep Australians safe, healthy and productive by treating indoor air in the same way as we treat the water we drink. At a time when productivity is on everyone's lips, clean indoor air is low-hanging fruit. Making the case for clean air with Jed directly to the National Science Council was a personal milestone for me because my journey into politics was for fighting for healthcare workers, for masks and for clean indoor air. This report provides the evidence base. The next steps are about implementation, which is essential to our resilience against future airborne threats and to our duty of care to Australians.
Call a member for Parks.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last weekend in the far west of New South Wales in my electorate, there was a three-day music festival, the Monday Bash. 14,500 people, 5,000 caravans rolled into town, and Broken Hill and Silverton were absolutely chock-a-block with people. While they were there, they undertook the Monday run, where they ran in their underpants apparently, but they raised $68,000 for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. They also set a new world record, and it'd be worth checking that out. The new world record, 7,200 people dressed in blue, made a map of Australia that from a drone footage looks amazing, but they also raised with that 115,888 for Beyond Blue. So this now is becoming an institution packed to capacity. Monday Plain is one of the most sensational places in my electorate. On the lookout, overlooking towards South Australia, you can actually see the curvature of the earth looking towards Monday. It's beautiful. But these people, Deputy Speaker, not only experienced the beauty of Silverton, Broken Hill and the far west, on their way to and from, they stopped at Menindee and Wilkenya and some of these other magnificent communities that are in the Parks electorate. And this has become an institution. People look forward to it, and it's really good that the visitors to the far west are contributing not only to the economy, but they're understanding how wonderful it is.
Call the member for Tangney.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. When local children book author Christy Byrne saw me out door knocking one day in Tangney, she gave me a copy of her latest novel, Into the Blue. Maybe it was because I was once a dolphin trainer, but I cannot think of any better book title. Set at Coogee Beach in Western Australia, Into the Blue is about a child who takes his older brother's camera without asking. When he loses it, he has a choice. Does he confess or does he stay silent? Like me, Chrissy is a big believer in public education, in the power of reading and in having access to books. Her books all feature some science along with adventure and big questions about the world and about ourselves. Christy, who is also a science communicator, also said that children are scientifically proven to be the future. I wholeheartedly agree. In my own life, in my families, and in the lives of the many students I have met across Tangney, I have seen how a single book can unlock creativity, innovation, empathy, and care. As this year's book week themes say, reading is magical, and so are our writer, illustrator, teachers, librarians, and of course, our students. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Call a member for Flint.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. After over 42 years of medical practice in the small rural community of Theodore, Dr Bruce Chater OAM has officially handed over ownership of the medical centre in the small town. Bruce has made general practice his life and has assisted countless patients along the way. Dr Chater has also been ably assisted by his wife Anne, who was operations manager at the clinic. Anne has been heavily involved in the local Theodore community and was one of the main organisers at the recent centenary celebrations in Theodore. Dr Chater will be passing the baton on to Dr Elizabeth Clarkson, who was born in Mara. Dr Clarkson said welcoming community and the family-orientated culture Dr Chater has built within the medical practice was part of the reason it attracted her to Theodore. My social media page was lit up with well wishes after I posted the news of Dr Chater and Anne's retirement. One message read, "Congratulations Dr Bruce and Anne on your retirement. Best doctor I've come across, delivered my 2 youngest babies and looked after my family better than anybody else. Enjoy the next chapter of your life and your grandbabies. You deserve the best." Dr Chater and his wife Anne will be moving to the Sunshine Coast, where they'll be closer to their children and grandchildren. All the best to Bruce and Anne. Thank you for everything you've done for the wider Theodore community.
Call member for Patterson.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Well, if it wasn't curried sausages or an Indian curry or perhaps a Tongan curry, they were all out at the Curry Festival on the weekend. It was the inaugural festival. And as I am a true curry girl, K-U-R-R-I, so great, they named the town twice. Quite a few years ago now, we were kicking around the idea of having a curry festival. Well, I just want to congratulate Councillor Rosa Grine and Cessnock Council on bringing the Curry Festival to reality. And at first, people were a little bit nervous about how many people might show up. Well, over 3,500 people turned up over the weekend to learn how to make curry, to just have a great experience with their family. They also coined the Arts Festival along with the Curry Festival, but I know that the curry was the main game. Chef Gavin came along to teach people how to make a curry. There were belly dancers, there were fire twirlers, there was someone who carved the swift parrot with a chainsaw and the Regent honey eater, and I guarantee it was slower than the real thing. But just let me say a great big thanks to our community who turned out to the newly refurbished Cole Brown Rotary Park in Kurri for the Curry Festival. It's a little sample of how great curry is, no matter whether you like it hot and spicy or whether you like it mild.
Member for Cook.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Cronulla Sharks were founded in 1963, and this organisation has spurred Sutherland Shire to have the most female rugby league, touch and OzTag female players in New South Wales. And in 2022, the National Rugby League appropriately added an NRLW team to the Sharks. But the change rooms and their facilities are diabolical. Opposition teams need to use change rooms across the road, cross the lights, walk into the stadium, past all the punters and the public to enter there. They have no proper showers or toilets, no private spaces for physiotherapy. Now, other electorates are being looked after. The Sea Eagles at Brookie have a $36 million being promised, $40 million to the Tigers at Leichhardt Oval, and a whopping over $300 million to the Penrith Panthers. Now, the Cronulla Sharks and NRLW have had no federal funding, nothing. A suburban ground that's used for all their home games as well as the home games for the men's. Under a Liberal government, I will fight to have the NRLW team and the female players at Cronulla Sharks to have adequate training facilities for them, and that is something only a Liberal government will deliver for the female players in the Sutherland Shire.
Call member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, I've received several complaints about long queues and customer wait times at Wallsend Post Office. Residents say they're waiting over half an hour to be served, and some have even been turned away because Australia Post staff do not have time or capacity to respond to increased customer needs. One resident told me that she often leaves work early if she wants to be served at Wallsend Post Office before 5 p.m. Another noted that it's very common for there to be only 3 employees working during peak times, and they seem to be overwhelmed by the amount of foot traffic coming into the store. Wallsend Post Office serves a large region, including the rapidly growing suburbs of Maryland, Fletcher and Minmire. Postal services are essential services, providing access to vital services, connecting people and communities right across the country and the globe. This lack of resourcing is causing considerable stress to people of all ages in my community, and I really appreciate the time and effort taken by those who have contacted my office to share their concerns and personal experiences with me. I stand with the people of Wallsend and their calls for a properly resourced post office that meets customer and community needs not just now but into the future. And I call on Australia Post to invest in their workforce and postal services in Wallsend. They deserve nothing less.
In accordance with Standing Order 43, the time for members' statements has concluded, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 6, relating to arts and cultural sector, standing in the name of the member from Macquarie.
I call a member from Macquarie.
I move the motion relating to the arts and cultural sector in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper.
I call a member from Macquarie.
Deputy Speaker, I'm really proud to support the Albanese government's third budget, which sustains the momentum we've built in reviving Australia's cultural sector and implementing our national cultural policy. Australia's 8 national arts training organisations are essential to the development of a skilled and innovative and creative workforce in Australia. This group, known as the Arts 8, includes the Australian Ballet School, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, the Australian National Academy of Music, the Australian Youth Orchestra, the Flying Fruit Fly Circus, NAISDA and the National Institute of Circus Arts, as well as NIDA. NIDA and AFTR's alumni, between them, have received 16 Academy Awards, including actors Cate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving, costume designer Catherine Martin and directors Gillian Armstrong, Warwick Thornton, Philip Noyce and Jane Campion. The 8 schools nurture the talent and build the capacity of the next generation of artists and arts workers. I was lucky enough to attend a performance by students from each of these institutions at an annual collaboration event not long ago, and I was astonished at what these talented young creatives are capable of. They're people who'll tell our stories on stage and screen for decades to come. The future vitality of our cultural life depends on their imagination and skill. But sadly, the future of these organisations was left in doubt by the previous government. When we came to government, we recognised there was a real crisis. Funding for the Arts 8 organisations had declined in real terms. After a decade of willful neglect, a number of these schools were left at risk of collapse. That's not something that we could allow to happen. I'm particularly proud that the budget provided $115.2 million over the next 4 years to the Arts 8, with $36.4 million in indexed ongoing annual funding following that. Another important organisation that is the treasure of our audiovisual heritage is the National Film and Sound Archive. Its collection reflects our cultural identity, our creativity and technical achievements. It cares for everything from the 1930s newsreels and vinyl records to digital games and VHS tapes of our best-loved soaps. Many of its records are fragile and deteriorating rapidly. Many of them are unique and irreplaceable. If they're lost forever. Nitrate-based film and images are particularly at risk, and the NFSA is in a race against time to digitise them. Some of the defining moments of our history are captured in this medium, including the earliest moving images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from as early as 1898. The world's first feature film, The Story of the Kelly Gang, in 1906, film of troops embarking for deployment during the First World War, and the bodyline cricket matches. The NFSA also provides storage for other national cultural institutions. Under the previous government, the NFSA was not adequately resourced to care for these priceless treasures. The 2024-25 budget provided $9.3 million over 4 years to upgrade facilities for the storage and preservation of nitrate film and images. This will double storage capacity and ensure the preservation of nitrate film and photographs for future generations to access. This investment builds on the $34 million over 4 years for the NFSA that was allocated in the previous budget, part of a $500 million support package delivered by the Albanese government to rescue our national cultural institutions from the financial crisis the previous government abandoned them to, which had put collections, jobs and our cultural heritage at risk. Deputy Speaker, the budget continues our commitments in Revive on First Nations languages. Before colonisation, more than 250 First Nation languages were spoken in Australia. Sadly, less that number are still spoken today as a direct result of past government policies to suppress them. Australia has one of the highest rates of language loss worldwide. We want to ensure First Nations languages are spoken for generations to come, so we're investing $53.8 million in the preservation and teaching of First Nation languages. There are many other key areas, but these are some of our most important.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
Yes, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Call a member for Mayo.
Thank you, Deputy
Sorry,
Speaker.
I better state the question. The question is the
yes.
motion be agreed to, and I call a member for Mayo.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The Victorian era art critic John Ruskin wrote in his book Mornings in Florence in 1875, great nations write their autobiographies in 3 manuscripts: the book of their deeds, the book of their words, and the book of their art. Not one of these books can be understood unless we read the 2 others. But of the 3, the only quite trustworthy one is the last. Indeed, the hallmark of civilisation is predicated on the development of arts and culture within a complex society. But all too often, governments neglect this critical element of society, instead focusing on the bread and circuses of large sporting complexes, which are important too. We do need to make sure that we don't neglect the arts. It's therefore pleasing that the 2024-2025 budget provides significant new investment in Australia's art and cultural sector. The electorate of Mayo, my community, my electorate, have a thriving community arts scene encompassing music, song, dance, theatre, sculpture, visual arts, painting and poetry. We have over 30 art venues and more than 20 community-based art groups in Mayo. Groups such as Inkpot Arts, Sterling Players, Yankalilla Youth Theatre, Hills School of Theatre Arts, Sterling Community Theatre, Adelaide Hills Performing Arts Centre, the Adelaide Hills Arts, Rocket Performing Arts, Theatre Bugs, South Coast Choral and Arts Society, and Flurio Dance Collective, and the Laughing Llama Dance and Drama, just to name a few. Preserving our cultural history is equally important as creating an environment for cultural development. A great example of this is in Mayo, in the Wollonga branch of the National Trust of South Australia, which manages 4 heritage buildings and runs several programs. And one of these programs is the Bassett Boys Schoolroom Tour, which provides a unique learning experience for primary school students, those from reception to Year 3, with a range of interactive activities. Activities are undertaken in the state heritage listed single-gabled schoolroom built of local freestone with a slate floor. Of course, South Australia has a long history of supporting the arts. In 1998, we established the South Australian Living Arts Festival, known as SALA, to celebrate visual artists and their work. The annual SALA event, which is held every August, brings art to the people, creating exhibitions in small businesses, in art galleries and in public spaces. In 2024, more than 600 venues were involved in the event and more than 9,000 artists are participating. In Mayo, more than 140 exhibitions are taking place and everyone in our community is getting involved. Of all the arts, the one that binds us most closely together, I believe, is that of music. In the words of the great philosopher Plato, music is the medicine of the soul. Music taps into the very essence of what it is to be human. It can make us laugh, it can make us cry, it can make us be inspired. Put simply, nothing influences our emotions more than music. Live music venues provide musicians and patrons with the opportunity to share experiences and for the musician to hone their art. Such venues encourage socialisation in a world where we are becoming more socially distant through the digitisation of life. Deputy Speaker, arts and culture forms the intricate cultural mosaic of our nation, and without it, we would be soulless and society devoid of any meaning. And so I very much support this motion and look for the government and future governments to make sure that we always invest in art and culture. And I applaud the great work that is being done with respect to funding the arts, and I look forward to the enormous creativity that into the future and what happens in my community. It is a joy to attend Sala exhibitions, it's a joy to attend plays, it's a joy to see young people perform on the stage for the very first time in their life. I commend the motion.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Lyons.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Macquarie and the Government Special Arts Envoy for bringing on this motion. Deputy Speaker, the creative economy, and I will talk about it in terms of economy at first, makes up 7% of our total GDP. That means 1 out of every $14 is generated in the culture and arts sector. It employs 2.7% of our Australian population. That's 1.5 times the entire population of Tasmania. The arts supports our tourism industry, an industry only slightly less valuable to the Australian economy than agriculture. And according to the figures from 2017, almost half of all tourists in Australia engaged with the culture and the arts. And coming from the state of Mona, Deputy Speaker, I can tell you that's absolutely true. But that being said, the point of arts and culture isn't just to generate money. The arts entertains us, it educates us, and most importantly, it provides insight into who we are. Sometimes it makes us laugh, sometimes it makes us cry, and at its best, it makes us ask the hard questions of ourselves. The arts provides us a shared Australian identity. It gives us national pride. Australia is the unique fusion of immigrants and of the oldest living continuous culture in the world. That's worth engaging with, and that's encapsulated in our arts sector. It's for this reason I'm very proud to speak on the member for Macquarie's motion as a member of the Albanese Labor government. Our government is channeling $144.2 million into Australia's cultural sector, and of course we've published Revive, and work is ongoing. $115.2 million is going towards the National Arts Training Organisations. And this sector group includes the Australian Ballet School, the Australian National Academy of Music and the Flying Fruit Fly Circus. Some of these organisations are the most prestigious, not just in Australia, but on the planet. They have trained directors, musicians, dancers and all manner of cultural roles. And thanks to the funding, they'll be doing it long into the future. Now, Deputy Speaker, there's no easy way to say this, and I hope I don't bring the House down, but the fact is the coalition government, when it was around, tried to kill Bluey. The ABC is responsible for the majority of Australian children's programming, including Australia's favourite Blue Dog. But under the former Liberal government, the ABC was subject to egregious cuts. The Albanese Labor government wants Australian children to watch programs which reflect them and their world. We want programs where kids can see people on TV that look like them and sound like them. And to this end, we are providing $14.5 million to the Australian Children's Television Foundation. This ensures that funding security for the ABC for the next 5 years and reinstates its indexation. We are cleaning up the mess of the former government in this area. Last year, the Australian Labor government allocated $34 million to the National Film and Sound Archive. And this year we're adding on an extra $9.3 million. And the member from Macquarie spoke beautifully about the importance of this archive. It covers everything from Australia's earliest films from the 1890s up to video games from the modern era. And it's not an easy task. Many of the films on file are nitrate-based film and need to be kept in the cold and in the dark and require very careful handling. The funding will go towards extending and improving their storage facilities. This means as a nation we can retain such pieces of heritage like the first moving pictures of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, the first feature film and footage of our troops heading abroad in the First World War. And we all remember the story, Deputy Speaker, before the last election of the National Gallery not even having enough money to keep leaks from the roof hitting the floor. I mean, just incredible. These repositories of the Australian story just starved for funds under the former government. The Australian government is also providing $5.2 million to support our orchestras and the territories. It's hard to believe, but in over their 10 years of government, the Liberals did not provide a single cent towards these orchestras. And the magic of music, and particularly classical music, and the difference it can make to kids when they hear classical music for the first time and hear it in their own communities, it can just be such a driving force for change. Almost half of all music played by these orchestras are Australian origin, 8% by First Nations composers and 28% by female composers. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot of mess to fix up, but we're well on the way to telling Australian stories, and that's what we do. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Indi.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Speaker. And I thank the member for Macquarie for this motion and for visiting my electorate last year to attend my Arts and Culture Roundtable in her capacity as the Special Envoy for the Arts. The Roundtable was an opportunity for my local arts and entertainment community in Indi to learn how to benefit from the government's national cultural policy, Revive. Regional Australia deserves to play a leading role in our national arts scene after so many years of being an understudy to the arts scenes of the major cities. The roundtable was attended by more than 70 people from across Indi, including the Borders Flying Fruit Fly Circus. Now, I've long advocated for the Fruities, as they're affectionately known, and I was thrilled to see the Circus School awarded $7.3 million in the government's most recent budget. Such an investment in our regional performing arts sector is a testament to the incredible work of the teachers, the students, the parents and supporters of this unique regional arts institution. Indi has a highly engaged and talented arts community with performers, visual artists, musicians, teachers, museum creators, producers, the lot, and they attended that roundtable last year. What we heard from them is that our thriving arts and cultural scene is held back from realising its creative and economic potential because investment in the arts has been in decline for many, many years. We heard loud and clear at the roundtable that regional Australia needs investment in cultural infrastructure and arts precincts to attract the best talent to perform and exhibit their work in local galleries, theatres and public spaces. The Benalla Art Gallery has a creative vision to be a world-class gallery on the shores of Lake Benalla, close to the heart of the CBD. Benalla is known for its incredible street art festival that transforms the regional city into an open-air gallery of murals by world-renowned street artists. I was delighted that the Benalla Art Gallery was awarded more than $2.9 million in federal funding towards its redevelopment and expansion under the Growing Regions program in May this year. I was pleased to support and advocate for this funding, which will go a long, long way to bringing to life the vision of the Friends of the Benalla Art Gallery, who also attended the roundtable last year. Deputy Speaker, having lived in Wangaratta for more than 35 years, I have very, very fond memories of the annual Wangaratta Festival of Jazz and Blues. With the prospect of the festival wrapping up, a new community group rallied to take the festival forward. And by May this year, more than $40,000 in crowdfunding had been achieved, demonstrating the appreciation and fondness the community has for this iconic festival. And then, in June this year, the festival organisers secured more than $52,000 from the federal government's Festivals Australia program. And that's a significant boost to support a free daytime outdoor stage and interactive art installation. Funding from both the community and the federal government will breathe new life and revitalise this fantastic festival. Artistic expression, participation and the enjoyment of cultural institutions, festivals and events enhance the prosperity of our regional communities and the health and well-being of people of all ages. Regional arts communities provide inclusive spaces for young creatives to express ideas, explore their passions and learn more about themselves. Even as a young adult, I learnt much about myself from joining a local theatre company, the Wangaratta Players. I learnt that when it comes to the theatre, my role is really just to make up the numbers. And while acting may not be my forte, I'm enthusiastic about supporting local theatre, from the professional productions of Wodonga's Hot House Theatre to the community-run extravaganzas of the Mansfield Musical and Dramatic Society. Thank you to all the passionate community members who work to protect and promote the arts in our region. As the member for Indi, I am proud of how our regional communities showcase our unique arts and cultural experiences. I look forward to continuing to work with the member for Macquarie and the government to strengthen regional Australia's arts sector and protect our cultural heritage. Regional arts communities, like those in Indi, are waiting in the wings, ready for their turn to truly shine in the national spotlight.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thursday morning was one of the more peaceful and inspiring starts to the day that I've had in this place. I had the opportunity to enjoy a beautiful performance by the Canberra Symphony Orchestra String Quartet. The Canberra Symphony Orchestra is one of the great classical music groups in my electorate, and they will celebrate their 75th anniversary next year. I was pleased to join the Minister for Finance, Senator Katie Gallagher, to announce an extra $4.1 million for the Canberra Symphony Orchestra in May, before the federal budget, with an ongoing $1.3 million each year as a sustainable funding model. It has long been known that the CSO have been chronically underfunded, particularly over the 10 years of the previous government. I have seen firsthand the work that the Canberra Symphony Orchestra undertakes. They are known for their diversity of programming, performing work by 45% Australian composers, 8% First Nations composers and 28% female composers, which is more than any other major orchestra in Australia. They also run important community programs, such as Painting with Parkinson's, Diverse Abilities, Heartstrings, and in aged care homes around the Territory. These are critical in community music events around Canberra, and they really help people to experience the music. I'm so proud to have the Canberra Symphony Orchestra in my electorate, and I'm proud to be part of a government that is adequately funding this and allowing them to thrive. I'm also proud that our government has committed $5 million to revitalising the Gorman House Arts Centre in my electorate, which is a vibrant hub for Canberra artists and will be celebrating their centenary this year also. Our Minister for the Arts is passionate about ensuring that Australia's arts sector gets the funding it needs to thrive, and our Special Envoy, the member for Macquarie, is certainly leading the charge for better recognition of community arts. With these passionate members of Parliament at the helm of our arts policy, it's no wonder that the Albanese Labor government has invested heavily in the local arts sector. For arts to continue to thrive in Australia, we must have a strong arts workforce. This means investing in national arts training organisations, including those within the Arts 8 group. This includes the National Institute of Dramatic Art, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, Naisda Dance College, the Flying Fruit Fly Circus, the Australian Ballet School, the National Institute of Circus Art and the Australian National Academy of Music, and the Australian Youth Orchestra. Our government values these organisations because of the importance of nurturing and recognising young creative talent to be able to get Australians to see Australian stories on screen and on the stage. In the last budget, the Albanese Labor government committed an additional $115.2 million over 4 years to support the long-term financial sustainability of the national arts training organisations. A further $36.4 million is in indexed ongoing annual funding will be provided to these organisations from 2028-29 to ensure the viability of these organisations well into the future. This will allow for future great Australian talent like Arts 8 trained Oscar winners Kate Blanchett and Hugo Weaving to study and develop their craft. Our most recent budget also provides $14.5 million to the Australian Children's Television Foundation to support the creation of Australian children's screen content, and as a parent of small children, I know how important that is. The Foundation has funded iconic television shows like Round the Twist and Dance Academy, and continues to provide funding to the Foundation means that children in Australia will be able to watch shows that have been created just for them. Our Treasury of Australia's Audiovisual Heritage, the National Film and Sound Archive, has also received funding in the most recent federal budget. Their collection includes film from the 1890s to digital games and reflects our cultural identity and technical achievements. The Albanese Labor government has provided the National Film and Sound Archive with $9.3 million over 4 years to upgrade and extend their facilities for the storage and preservation of nitrate film and images. Deputy Speaker, investment in the arts is investing in the cultural preservation and development of Australia, and I'm proud that we're committed to funding it, including right here in my community of Canberra. Canberra is a community that really values the arts, and I was so pleased to make those announcements I mentioned as part of an Albanese Labor government that recognises the importance of arts for every Australian.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Fowler.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I also would like to thank the member for Macquarie for bringing this motion to the House. Arts and culture are important to help build a society that enable the minds to question and stay curious. The arts encompass all aspects of the human condition, from how we eat to how we engage with each other to how we find meaning and value in life. Whilst natural sciences move us towards answers to the question why, the arts seek to explore the question answer the question how, the arts seek to explore the question why. The arts play a crucial role in my diverse electorate of Fowler. It provides many in my community the platform to share the richness of their culture. It allows them to maintain a sense of where they are from and encourages them to explore their creative skills as they struggle to settle into a new society. From the Serbian and Croatian folkloric dancing to the Vietnamese fan and hat dance, from the Arabic dabka line dancing to candombe at the Uruguayan club, Fowler is rich in cultural celebration, and celebrating our cultures of origin helps open connections between us all. I was pleased, therefore, two of Fowler's arts-based projects received the government 4-year investment, namely Curious Works and Powerhouse Youth Theatre. Curious Works has been investing in and nurturing artists across multiple disciplines since 2005. They provide a space for artists to explore diversity and to see how ideas and identity intersect in our contemporary multicultural landscape. Powerhouse Youth Theatre in Fairfield is the only professional theatre company in Western Sydney. They provide a crucially important role in developing both the artists of the future as well as training the next generation of production and backstage staff, in particular providing a space to encourage culturally and linguistically diverse artists to express their own stories. They stand in the long tradition of allowing complex contemporary issues to be explored through drama and creative expression. For our young people in Fowler, many of whom have come from war-torn countries and who are seeking answers to the questions of who they are, this is a vital service. While I welcome the investment in these two important art providers, I want to acknowledge that this is not the end of the journey towards investments in the arts in Western Sydney. Our region faces unique challenges in terms of language barriers, accessibility, and financial limitations. The government and the minister I urge the government and the minister not only to maintain investment in the arts in Western Sydney, but to look for areas where access to funding may be enhanced. Cost of living pressures inevitably reduce the role of individual philanthropy and private investment in the arts. The use of taxpayer money is so important because it would be hard to imagine some of our amazing institutions, such as our symphony orchestras and ballet school, existing without this funding. I've spoken before of rejecting a purely utilitarian approach to public policy. That is why I have called for the governments to review the Morrison government's Job Ready Graduates package. This package has seen an increase in the fee cost of arts degrees in an attempt to shoehorn students from STEM subjects. While we all understand the benefits of STEM graduates and appreciate the higher wages on offer for them, this approach has potentially discriminating implications given that women are much more likely to study arts degrees, and I did study arts degrees, so it fails to face the reality that students choose areas of study that they are good at and interested in. That's why arts students have continued to enrol despite the increasing personal financial cost implications. This is a fundamental problem that needs addressing urgently. Without investment in the arts and culture, we are at risk of becoming a nation devoid of poets, artists, filmmakers, of which I was one, writers, and important voices in how we think about human relationships and ethical questions, questions that often arise from scientific and technological advances. STEM needs the arts if we are to harness the benefits and avoid the pitfalls of advances in AI and medical possibilities, for example. As I said earlier, the arts are the way that we seek to answer the deepest questions as to why we are here and to find purpose and meaning in our lives. The artistic endeavour helps us to write and share our stories with one another, fostering understanding and community spirit. Investment in the arts is an investment in the future. I look forward to working with the government in discussing future plans for the creative sector in my electorate and exploring how we can further collaborate to ensure sustainability of arts projects in Fowler. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member. The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of debate will be made an order of the day for the next day of sitting. I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 7 for a motion in relation to small businesses.
And I call the member for Casey.
I move the motion relating to small businesses in the terms in which it appears on the notice paper. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, it is a privilege to rise and talk about small business today. Like many members across the Parliament, small businesses play a key part in our community, and they are more than just businesses. They are, in many cases, part of the fabric of the community. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we need to continue to support them in the challenges they face. But as part of that, I have to share the story, Deputy Speaker, of a great member of our community that we unfortunately lost last Monday. His name was Sam. Many knew him as Amigo because that's how he greeted people at his business. The business was officially called the Red Robin Milk Bar, but many people in our community, including my children, simply knew it as the Lolly Shop. And it would not be a day go by that I didn't pick my kids up from school and the first thing we would hear is, can we go to the Lolly Shop today? And every time we did, mainly on a Friday, if they'd behaved themselves, Amigo would be there, and he was called Amigo because he would greet everyone with, hello, Amigo. He would talk to the kids. He would treat them as very special people, as little adults, and he would always make sure that they got an extra little treat on the way through. There was an outpouring of grief through our community, through the Mount Evelyn community and Widener community when Amigo passed away. I was up here in Canberra, but I know when my wife told our children, there were tears in our house and there was tears across many houses in our community. And it just goes to show that when we talk about small businesses and we talk about family businesses, that it's not just that business and they're not just doing it to make a profit. They are providing for their families, but they give so much more. And so I want to pay tribute to Amigo today, husband to Sue, a father to William and Nina, and a man that gave so much to the Mount Evelyn and the Casey community. Rest in peace, Amigo. I hope you're sharing lollies up in heaven with many other people. And that's what it's about, Deputy Speaker. It's the people behind these small businesses. And small businesses all across my community are struggling, all across the country are struggling. Over 2,863 businesses in Victoria have declared insolvency since the Albanese Labor government came to power. Across the country, over 10,000 businesses have declared insolvency. And that's the highest number since 2011-2012. Small business is in crisis. They are struggling, and small business is always the business that gets hit first. The reason being, they don't have cash reserves. They don't have the cash reserves of multinationals, the assets on their books so they can get loans from their banks and get extensions. And so at a time when small business have their costs going up, their expenses going up and their sales going down, what do we hear from the Minister for Small Business? Nothing. Silence on support for small business. In almost 2.5 years of the Albanese Labor government, the Small Business Minister has introduced one bill 2 months ago into Parliament that was directly related to small business. That's it. 2.5 years, one bill. The best initiative we can get from the Minister is that if you invest money that you don't have, you'll get a rebate on on a solar panel or a battery. Well, that's nice if you've got the money. But again, it's just pushing the government's agenda, not actually supporting small businesses. And these are people that have put it all on the line. They've taken out loans against their house. My old boss, Andrew Blaine, when he bought Yarra Valley Snack Foods, for about 6 to 12 months, his wife and he had to eat baked beans and 2-minute noodles to feed their family because they paid their employees first. And that's all this small businesses in my community. I do support divestiture. I spoke about the need to do more, Member for Kennedy. I spent over a decade working in the FMCG industry, and I saw firsthand the predatory behaviour of Woolworths and Coles and how they punish small businesses and food manufacturers. I was in the room on those conversations. So I will support small business, and Woolworths and Coles need to be brought to account. But the government has to also do more to create the conditions for small business to survive. They don't want a handout. They just want the ability to go about their business in a strong economic environment.
The member's time has expired. Is the motion seconded? I thank the member for Groom. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Gilmore.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, small businesses and their workers are the backbone of my region. On the New South Wales South Coast, we have lots of different businesses, from tradies to retailers, hospitality, accommodation and tourism providers, manufacturers, dairy farmers, health providers and more. It's no wonder that small businesses love the South Coast region. It has so much to offer. A beautiful environment, beaches, bays, bush, gorgeous villages, a great place to raise a family or retire. But our local businesses on the New South Wales South Coast have been through a lot, from the drought to the black summer bushfires to natural disaster after natural disaster, COVID-19 and more natural disasters. But one thing that our local businesses and communities have in spades is a love for community, supporting each other through some of the toughest of times. And, Deputy Speaker, that's why we have to do everything possible to support our small businesses. We know they are doing it tough, and workers too. And that is why the Albanese government is doing everything possible to provide relief for small businesses where we can. It's why we provided the $325 energy bill relief for 1 million small businesses that businesses in my electorate are starting to benefit from. It's why our tax cuts for every taxpayer is so important, because we know that when taxpayers have more money in their pay packet, it means more money spent in our local businesses, which supports local spending and jobs. Deputy Speaker, our energy efficiency grants for small businesses is proving very popular and providing much needed relief in Gilmore. Just recently I announced 15 local businesses in Gilmore were successful in receiving an energy efficiency grant. Grants were around $25,000 and in particular were used by businesses to implement new technology to lower energy consumption and energy costs. I was really pleased to deliver a total of $325,000 in grants for these 15 local businesses, which ranged from caravan parks to hospitality providers, manufacturers, a brewery and more. Just last week, I visited one of the successful recipients, a boutique brewery, Dangerous Ales, at Milton. This award-winning brewery has been operating for 5 years at the Milton Hotel, and the grant, I was pleased to learn, will help the owners, Damien and Alice, set up new digital tank monitoring technology, which will help reduce their energy costs by monitoring their glycol brewing system remotely using an app. The brewery produces around 200,000 litres of beer per year and supplies artisan beers to local restaurants as well as some major liquor chains and boutique eateries as far away as Tasmania and Western Australia. They produce 4 or 5 core beers, including their most popular Christie Boy Lager, and release new brews every second or third week. Deputy Speaker, these grants are part of the Albanese government's commitment to ease cost of living pressures for Australian businesses by putting downward pressure on energy bills without adding to inflation. They are just one of many measures outlined in our small business statement, which outlines $641.4 million in targeted support for small businesses in the recent budget. Deputy Speaker, I want to take these last moments to give a shout out to all our amazing local businesses and their workers across Gilmore. Recently, I had the pleasure of attending the Eurobodalla Business Awards hosted by Eurobodalla Council, and I've got to say this was a wonderful celebration of businesses in the Eurobodalla. And on Friday night, I attended the Shoalhaven Business Awards with so many magnificent finalists and award winners. And a special shout out to all our Kiama businesses, ably represented in the Illawarra Business Awards, and well done to the Kiama and District Business Chamber, who always run very progressive and wonderful networking opportunities for local businesses. Thank you to all our small businesses for everything you do to support our workers and communities.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Groom.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Casey for raising this very important issue. A record number of insolvencies we're experiencing under the Albanese government, and I commend him on the compassion he showed in his speech. Speaker, look, I remember the recession we had to have. I think the member for Kennedy might have been in the state parliament when that went through the early 90s. It was a very difficult time. I remember it for this speech because that's when I learnt what the word insolvency meant. Speaker, as I watched my father's small business go through it. And Speaker, I think, and the member for Casey did a great job of this, when we talk about insolvencies, we're not talking about something that happens to some corporate entity, some impersonal thing that takes place on sheets of paper. We're talking, particularly in small business, we're talking about families who suffer the brunt, who don't have the cash savings to ride through these sort of times. And when these happens, they hit hard. For us, it was the car went, the house went. We moved to a different city. For me, that was a different school, different friends, different football teams. For my dad, it was probably, if we're honest, it was probably a big hit to his mental health. He moved from running a business to working as a labourer. For my mum, it meant having to move to Sydney to work. It was a tremendous impact on our family. We went from a family that was all together, watching my dad go off proudly to run his business, to suffering a huge hit. And I certainly wasn't alone. There were thousands of families across Australia during that time who suffered that. That's what insolvency means. And Speaker, today, we're in a GDP per capita recession. We've been in that situation for 5 quarters now, and sadly what we're seeing, Speaker, is a lot of kids learning once again what insolvency means. Right across Australia, right across our economy, a record number of insolvencies taking place, and it gives me no joy whatsoever to see Queensland sadly leading that table. So as we're talking on this topic, what we're talking about is another generation of young Australians looking up at the impact on their families as these small family businesses go through these terrible times. And no doubt, Speaker, that those small, medium businesses, those family-run businesses, are looking around at the moment, they're asking themselves, am I better off under Labor? Am I better off since Labor came to government? And sadly, across the board, Speaker, the answer is no. The answer is no, we're not better off. I speak to small businesses. I think about the IGA in Southtown in my electorate, skyrocketing power bills. They've seen their bills go absolutely through the roof to the point where John at Southtown is now paying twice what he was previously, despite having installed somewhere around $35,000 worth of energy-saving devices. Skyrocketing power bills. We've got higher loan repayments as interest continues to push up and up. We've got increased staff costs, adding complexity around hiring. And as they look ahead at the IR changes that have come through in legislation that are coming into the workplace, they have absolutely no idea what they mean, because these are mum and dad operations that do not have a legal team who can sit there and trawl through 300 pages of legislation and understand what the impacts are going to be. There are fewer apprentices and trainees coming through. Since Labor took office, Australia has 85,000 fewer apprentices and trainees, a loss of 1 in 5. That's across the board. And sadly, Speaker, we've got near impossible insurance premiums, insurance rates going through the roof. So when these small and medium businesses look out and they ask that question, are we better off under Labor? The answer they're coming back with time and time again is no. And Speaker, what's important to point out is that we are not here by accident. We are not in this situation by accident, but rather by the deliberate design of a series of legislation that Labor has brought about that has made things worse for small businesses in our country. I could point to the price caps in the gas industry, which have done what price caps have done since they were first reported in 300 AD, by the way, when they lead to lower supply, higher prices. They do this every time. It's across the board. This is what happens, and it's doing it again in our sector. I could talk to the IR legislation that has been brought forward that will make things harder for small businesses. I can talk about the $315 billion of additional spending, which is driving inflation. And then we turn to our small business Minister for Small Business, who has produced a grand total of one piece of legislation relevant to small business. Speaker, we are here by design. We're in a worse place. This is where Labor has taken us, and this is why small businesses are very upset.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Small businesses represent opportunity, an opportunity for people to take control of their work lives, to create jobs and provide for their families. For multicultural communities like mine, starting a small business is more than just a way to make a living. It is a pathway for new migrants to build generational wealth, to establish roots and to contribute to the broader Australian economy. Our government is aware that small businesses are facing significant pressures at the moment. As the member for Holt, I am regularly in contact with small business owners across my electorate in suburbs such as Hampton Park, Narre South, Lynbrook, Lyndhurst, Cranbourne, Clyde, Botanic Ridge, Pearcedale and Torridon. Their stories are proof of resilience and a reminder of the challenges they face. Spin a Yarn, a cafe and a yarn store run by two mothers next to my office in Cranbourne West. The owners have spoken honestly with me about the difficulties they are currently facing with escalating electricity costs and the reduction in sales as people struggle with the cost of living. Pressure like this has made many small business owners consider selling, a heartbreaking prospect for any family that has poured their heart and soul into their livelihood. It is for small businesses like Spin a Yarn that this year's budget includes more than $640 million in practical and targeted support. This support includes measures such as a $325 energy bill rebate and the extension of the instant asset write-off. These initiatives are designed to ease the burden on small businesses, helping them to stay afloat and continue contributing to our communities. Small business owners are also set to benefit under Labor's Stage 3 tax cuts. With the average small business owner in Australia earning approximately $76,000 a year, they are set to save an extra $1,600 per year than under the coalition. These are practical steps that the Albanese Labor government is taking to support small businesses. Now, let me address the claims made by the opposition. They've attempted to paint a picture of unprecedented business bankruptcies under this government, but this is simply misleading. What we are witnessing today with business bankruptcy is a delayed consequence of COVID-19 pandemic. Government policies during the pandemic kept insolvency rates historically low as businesses were shielded from the full effect of the economic downturn. The Reserve Bank Governor, who the opposition is fond of quoting, recently stated, "If you look at the trend of insolvencies over time, we are not even back to where we were, trend-wise, pre-pandemic." Let's be clear, no business going under in this country is good. Every closure represents a family, a dream, and a loss of our community. However, the opposition's attempt to twist the facts for political gain is not only unhelpful, but also disingenuous. They are more interested in scoring political points than in genuinely supporting small businesses. This is the same opposition that ignores expert advice when it suits them, Whether it's the advice of the Reserve Bank Governor, scientists at the CSIRO, or the security concerns raised by the Director General of ASIO, the Albanese Labor government remains committed to backing Australia's 2.5 million small businesses. We understand the challenges they face, and we will continue to provide the support they need to thrive in these difficult times. Thank you.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Toorak.
Thank you. I rise to speak in support of the motion by the member for Casey, which correctly points out that Australia's small business sector is at breaking point. They're at breaking point because of the economic incompetence of those opposite and their cost of living crisis. Small businesses, well, they're not immune to higher rents, higher energy bills, higher prices for goods, and of course the dozen interest rate rises that have occurred under this government. All this cost of living pain has led to another record being set by the Albanese Labor government, and once again it's not a record to be proud of. Data released by the Australian Securities and Investment Commission show the number of businesses that entered insolvency last financial year was 11,049. That is the highest number ever recorded. By contrast, the number of insolvencies in 2020-21, when we were in government and we were combating a once-in-a-century pandemic, was 4,235. In my home state of Western Australia, 733 businesses entered insolvency last financial year. Not surprisingly, businesses linked to the construction sector accounted for the most insolvencies, which of course only exacerbates our housing crisis. This was followed by insolvencies in the accommodation and hospitality sectors. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like this will be a record for long. Gail Dickerson, who sits on the Turnaround Management Association board, has said, and I quote, "We're not at the peak yet. The consensus and my view is we've probably got another 12 months really kind of still ramping up before we hit the peak." This is reinforced by results from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry's WA Business Confidence Survey conducted earlier this year. That survey found that 18% of businesses believed they were at risk of closing or were significantly scaling back their operations this year. So think of it, that's almost 1 in 5 businesses. At a time when businesses are hurting more than ever before, you would think those opposite, you'd think they would do something in their power to put downward pressure on inflation and provide support to the sector. Unfortunately not. In fact, under those opposite, as we know, well-reported, inflation is heading in the wrong direction, with Australia an outlier amongst advanced economies. And instead of providing support to businesses, Labor has chosen to make it harder by adding further cost, confusion and complexity to the industrial relations system. I recently wrote to the small businesses across my Durack community about these reforms. I also sought their feedback on what were the issues that they would like to see us address in this place. The top 5 issues raised with me were: 1, cutting and simplifying red tape; 2, rising insurance premiums, which is a big deal in Western Australia, particularly across the north; lower, simpler and fairer taxes; 4, difficulty finding skilled staff and affording wage costs; and 5, ensuring affordable and reliable energy. Now let's consider whether Labor are addressing these concerns. On red tape, well, the industrial relations reforms of those opposites have only made an already far too complex system even harder to navigate. And one of the biggest issues for small business is that casual employment has been redefined. Before these changes, a casual employer was defined solely by reference to the terms of the employment contract. The new definition consists of 15 factors that considers the real substance, practical reality and true nature of the employment relationship. These changes would effectively stop casuals working regular patterns of work. Now, we know this will disproportionately impact small businesses as they employ 80% of Australia's casual workforce. So what about taxes? Coalition has proposed extending the instant asset write-off to $30,000 and make this an ongoing for businesses. Labor voted against this proposal, leaving the scheme at $20,000 and is due to expire. I also note that when we were in government, we reduced the small business tax rate from 30% to 25%. This meant that the tax rate was at its lowest levels in 50 years. So no good on red tape, no good on taxes. What about ensuring affordable and reliable energy? Well, I don't think I really need to say much more about that. Labor, you need to do better.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Hasluck.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Seriously, this is a cheap and lazy motion by the member for Casey. He casts around for an easy statistic, rips it out of context and then tries to blame something on the current government. And just hearing the member for Durack just now rip on about insurance premiums as though climate change hasn't had something to do with the fact of the increased need for payouts. And affordable energy, I mean, seriously, a $600 billion debt to every single Australian is somehow going to make any small business insurance energy bills cheaper. Cutting regulations. I don't think this year, your last week was the first time you heard about small businesses needing help with regulations, because the reality is that that's been an ongoing issue for every government, but it's actually something we're prepared to tackle. So it isn't just possible to create a good economic environment overnight. It isn't possible to create a bad one in a short time either. That takes years of neglect to create a really bad system. And the member for Casey and the member for Durack can learn how to do that in his party room, and as for her too, if they are either around long enough. The Coalition had a poor grant system, a poor robo-debt system, a poor submarine procurement system, and no system at all for working out what portfolios their Prime Minister had. They are the specialists at setting up a poor system and sitting back and watching it all fall completely to bits over time. And the member for Casey knows that the pandemic had a deleterious effect on many businesses, and also that many were propped up during it. Unfortunately, $30 billion of our taxpayers' dollars went to businesses making a profit because they just could not care to set up a system to ensure it went to those small businesses that were actually needing it the most. But also we know that banks and other lenders gave a lot of help to all sorts of sizes of businesses. And since the pandemic, we've had a supply crisis and a rise in energy costs and a rise in inflation. And these conditions are worldwide and something we are working to tackle head-on. The member for Casey will be aware too of the comments on this matter by the Reserve Bank Governor last Friday at the House Economics Committee public hearing, of which I am a member and heard firsthand. She outlined how during the pandemic there was a lot of government support for business and there were very low interest rates. And at that time, the level of business insolvencies was at a historic low as a result. The number has gone up since. Governor Bullock was at pains to point out, however, that given the increasing number of businesses, the figure was not at a historic high, and indeed that the number of insolvencies was not yet back at the pre-pandemic trend levels. But that doesn't mean we still don't care, because what the Governor went to say further was that there was a bit of missing from the debate about this, and a little bit of understanding was needed. The member for Casey knows this. He knows he's cherry-picking statistic, and he is happy to cherry-pick at the expense of small business. And this motion on small business, so let's talk about a few of the great things that we are in fact doing already in our short 2 years. The Minister for Small Business announced on the 24th of July more than $41 million to help more than 1,700 small businesses upgrade their facilities, to take control of their energy bills and lower emissions through the round 2 of the energy efficiency grants for small and medium-sized enterprises. On the 23rd of July, we've now taken action on the payment times for small business. Members opposite might have done that, but of course they didn't. And the Payment Times Reporting Amendment Act passed last sitting. And this legislation will ensure that the big business is held accountable for poor payment practices, and better payment times reduces the administration and the financing costs. It's certainly the sort of thing that would actually help small businesses stay afloat by making their ends meet each month, but not clearly enough for the Liberal and National Party to take action on. We are encouraging small businesses to go green and save money at the same time. On the 5th of July, the Minister for Small Business announced that farmers, freight companies and other small and medium businesses will be able to get cheaper finance, rooftop solar, batteries and more energy-efficient vehicles and equipment. A far cry from the $600 billion promise of nuclear energy that the opposition leader is promising instead.
There's more. Energy bill relief of $325 to around 1 million small businesses, extending the $20,000 instant asset write-off, contrary to the member for Durac's misleading comments earlier, abolishing 457 nuisance tariffs to cut compliance costs and reduce red tape, contrary to the member for Durac's statements earlier, and a new higher target to source 20% of the Commonwealth procurement below $1 billion and 40% of procurement below $20 million from small and medium enterprises.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Cowper.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I'm happy to rise to speak to this motion put on by the member of Casey for those listening at home. In effect, says that Australian small businesses are at breaking point and failed by this government. Points out that in my state alone, that 4,635 businesses in New South Wales have closed over the last 12 months, and this government, the Labor government, Labor Green Teal government, is now the worst government for Australian businesses on record, having surpassed the 10,757 businesses collapsing under government. It gives me no joy to actually speak about this, Deputy Speaker, because having been in business myself for 16 years and knowing how tough business is, and I remember going through the GFC in 2008, 2009 and paying my employees, paying the rent, which is nothing like rents these days, paying the electricity bills, which is nothing like electricity bills these days, and going home and actually saying to my wife, and this is a true story, we don't have any money this fortnight. This is tough, really tough. But I look back on those days back then, and that is nothing like now. Last Saturday, I went into a local coffee shop, which people in the metropolitan areas would call a hole in the wall. It's got a fridge, it's got a coffee machine, it's got lights. And I spoke to the owner and I said, how's things going? She said, oh look, my electricity bill went from $4,000 a quarter to $6,000 a quarter for a hole in the wall in Maxwell. And she's got employees, and she's saying the same thing about the butcher around the corner. But I guess she's lucky because she's getting through and still coping because she has a very strong established businesses. But there are other businesses out there, like the Wicked Elf in Port Macquarie, who'd been around for a decade. They closed their doors because their electricity bill, because of a direct result of this government's rush to renewables and energy policy. After 10 years, they shut the door because their electricity bill was higher than their rental bill. This was a brewery 8 times, 10 times the size of this room, and they had to shut down, and people lost their jobs. So when we come into this room and talk about, what the government's doing or there's actually human emotion. These people have families and children that go to schools in the local areas. And then when the government implements industrial relations laws that allow union representatives to come into your workplace and tie you up in knots on a suspicion, not a reasonable suspicion, but just a suspicion that you might not be doing the right thing. Even in the police, 12 years in the police, I had to have a reasonable suspicion to stop somebody or talk to somebody. They can walk in and they can tie business owners up in knots. And those people, those mums and dads or generational businesses, they don't have the money for the lawyers. So they have to spend hundreds of hours wasting time rather than getting on with business. And it is no doubt that the direct reason we're seeing these statistics of closures, record numbers, you've seen in the construction industry alone, 111% increase in the closure of construction companies. And that, again, is a direct result of the poor policies of Labor, Greens and the Teals that don't understand business. The Treasurer himself, and I do not believe that he had the gall to say this, said he lasted 6 long months in private industry. What an insult to private industry, small business, who are the backbone of our economies, particularly in regional and rural areas. The Treasurer should hang his head in shame, and the government should hang their head in shame for what they've done to small business.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to. I call the member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I recognise that right now that small businesses are under a lot of pressure, and I think that it's a challenging time that we're having within the Australian economy. I recognise that some of the top issues that small businesses are dealing with include skills shortages, cybersecurity, digital transformation, the regulatory environment and inflationary pressures. And I'd say that for each of these areas, this is areas that the Albanese Labor government is working on. I'm in touch with our community. I meet with small businesses regularly in my electorate. In fact, recently I got to meet Simon from Stewart and Heaton Clothing. They started in Belmont, in the heart of Swan, and they provide a range of workwear to a range of industries, including firefighters and policemen. And I think that it's great that they started in the heart of Swan, and now they operate all across the nation. And it's great to hear stories of innovation, hard work and resilience. It's also great to hear of workers that are being treated fairly and recognised for their hard work. And so for this particular organisation, one of the codes that they've signed up to is ethical clothing. And so they've got good standards for their procurement chain and making sure that workers are indeed being paid fairly. But what that means is it means that firefighters and police officers have confidence in the clothes that are being made right here in Australia. But in saying that, I know that it's all not all roses, and so I understand the challenges of running a small business are real, and that's why the Albanese government is focused on providing practical support and long-term solutions to help small businesses thrive. Our policies are designed with one goal in mind: to strengthen the resilience of small businesses while offering targeted assistance to those encountering difficulties. And if I think about who the largest employer is across Australia, it is indeed small to medium businesses. So in preparing for this debate tonight, I did some research about what has happened to small businesses in my electorate. What I found might surprise the member for Casey. According to .id, Australia's provider of demographic statistics to local government, there were 4,205 businesses in the town of Victoria Park, compared to 3,933 in 2021. That's an increase of 272 businesses in the town of Vic Park since we have been in power. In the city of Belmont, in 2023, there were 4,529 businesses, compared to 4,225 in 2021. Again, to do the maths, that's an increase in 304 businesses in the city of Belmont since we have come into power. The city of Canning, in 2023, there were 10,711 small businesses compared to 9,995. That's a substantial increase of 716 businesses in the city of Canning. So, in just those three local councils in my electorate, that's a total of 1,292 new businesses across 3 local government areas. It's pretty impressive. Or to put it another way, there's 19,445 businesses in total in 2023, compared to 18,153 businesses in 2021. That's a 7% increase with the number of businesses since the Liberals were in power. An increase in businesses means an increase in local jobs as well. And we have seen an increase in jobs in the southwest region where my electorate sits since the Liberals were in power. Recent labour force figures reveal an unemployment rate of 3.7% in the region in May 2024 compared to 5.1% in 2021. Those figures are positive news to my thriving community. Of course, I acknowledge that we need to ensure that we provide an environment that supports businesses to prosper. This year, the budget allocated over $640 million in support that's specifically tailored for small businesses. Whether it's navigating financial stress or accessing expert advice, there is advice. For businesses facing tough times, there's the Small Business Debt Line. It's free and government supported, and we continue to employ different actions to help small businesses every day.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to. I'll call the member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Great pleasure to rise to speak in support of my friend, the member for Casey, although it's no pleasure, obviously, to discuss what we're discussing, which is small business insolvency, and I wish it wasn't happening. It's often been said, Deputy Speaker, that small business is the engine room of the economy, and that's true, and I thought we could have this discussion about why that is. Why are small businesses the engine room of the economy? There's so many of them, of course. They're traditionally very high in productivity, and this is due to several factors, including the fact that a small business is flexible and able to adapt to market change. And also, and probably the key thing, is that the financial stakeholders of a small business are often the managers, and it's often families. And that level of personal risk that these small businesses people put themselves under leads to extremely hard-working people, innovation and very high productivity. And I have many small businesses in my electorate: farms, shops, small manufacturers and service businesses. A lot of it around agriculture and food manufacturing. But the tragedy in Australia at the moment is that small businesses' insolvencies are up, and that's not good for Australia. Now let's have a think about why. Why might small business insolvencies be up? And why I'm sure all of us talking to our small business community, and they are telling us that they're finding business very hard at the moment. Well, firstly, we've got an inflationary environment, and that's making things tough. Input costs are up. One of the causes of this is government spending and just lower overall productivity in the economy. And there's an expanded public sector taking key workers away from private enterprise. Input costs are up, especially energy. Gas is more expensive, electricity is more expensive, insurance is more expensive. In many cases, the infrastructure is not keeping up. The road network is not doing what it needs to do to make sure small business, particularly in my area, can get its produce to where it needs to go to. But one of the things that is really frustrating small businesses that I talk to are the industrial relations changes. And the small business I talk to are really worried about just the regulatory burden that this is going to put upon them. Now, it's easier for a corporation to deal with that. They've got a huge HR department and they can try and work through the morass of extra legislation that exists as a result of the new government. But put yourself in the shoes of a small business that's got to try and work through all of that. It's really hard. They can't afford to hire big, costly HR departments, so they've got to often be up really late doing it themselves. Also, flexibility is reduced with these new IR laws, particularly in relation to casual employees, and that really hurts small business who need that flexibility. The other thing small business tells me is that it's getting more and more that everyone seems to want to clip the ticket of what we do. Hard-working small business, let's say they're an apple grower, let's say they're a dairy farmer, let's say they're a food manufacturer. The number of government bureaucracies that want to come in and add a cost to their business and have cost recovery just makes it harder and harder. And these people feel like their work is not being respected. They're feeling like, well, the government is just sort of feeding off my hard work, my risk, my effort, by sending a bunch of bureaucrats in there to make sure I'm compliant with this, to make sure I'm compliant with that, to make sure I've followed this regulation. And we're not going to get more small businesses by doing that. A fruit grower said to me that I spoke to earlier today, Sam, it seems like it's death by 1,000 cuts. And we're so risk averse as a society, and we're also worried about what the government's going to do to us, even if we make an innocent mistake, that we just spend so much on regulation, on self-regulation now, that it's tying us up in knots. Now, productivity, it kills productivity. Productivity lifts profitability, and that lifts everyone's living standards. And the policies which we have seen from this government are not supporting that aim. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Member for Canberra.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Small businesses are facing a lot of pressure right now, and I know that from when I talk to the small businesses in my community. The Albanese Labor government is committed to helping small businesses build resilience in the long term and provide practical support for small businesses who are experiencing challenges. This year's budget provides more than $640 million in practical targeted support for small businesses. For small businesses who need assistance, there is a free government-supported phone line, the Small Business Debt Helpline, with experienced small business financial counsellors who can provide advice to weather a difficult time. This helps to support the mental health of small business owners who face unique challenges as their mental state is connected to the financial health of their businesses. Other ways that our government is supporting the financial health of small business is through the New Access for Small Business Owners program, which provides tailored, free and confidential mental health support to small business owners. Small businesses can also engage early with the Australian Taxation Office, who can provide support to people finding themselves in difficulty. Our government is also funding an expansion of the National Tax Clinic program, with an additional 5 clinics across the country to provide small businesses and individuals to better tax advice and help. Small businesses can also access the Tax Concierge service through the Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. This Ombudsman is funded to provide support where there may be disputes. We are easing the pressure on small businesses by streamlining process to minimise administrative burdens and help them bounce back from challenges. In particular, eligible small businesses will receive the $325 energy bill relief payment under our most recent budget. Our government also provided $1.8 million to post regulatory reforms to retail energy markets that will ensure that small businesses are on electricity contracts that work better for them. And I was really pleased to visit a small business in my electorate, the Scott Lego Gallery, with the Minister for Small Business to talk about those announcements from our budget and hear how it would benefit them. And we are levelling the playing field for small businesses by enabling healthy competition and ensuring small business get a fair go. We are supporting small businesses to grow by removing barriers to entry and encouraging growth in the small business sector. By reviewing and reforming Australia's competition policy settings to increase productivity, reduce the cost of living and boost wages. Australian small businesses are obviously vital to the country's prosperity. We are doing everything we can to ensure that small businesses continue to play their critical role in making Australia's economy stronger. Deputy Speaker, as you know, the member for Casey's assertions that we are failing small businesses are utterly false. We are doing more than ever to support small businesses and ensure that they continue to thrive into the future. We know that with the unwinding of COVID-era relief, the number of corporate insolvencies is slightly exceeding previous peaks. However, the level of corporate insolvencies as a proportion of all companies is lower than the long-term historical average. Companies entering external administration are also increasingly using the small business restructuring process to successfully restructure their debt and remain in business. And this is something I've heard a lot about from people in my electorate. The government will continue to monitor developments in this space. We know that small businesses are the engine room of our nation's economy. They collectively employ more than 5 million Australians and contribute more than $500 billion to our nation's economy every year. We are continuing to back Australia's 2.5 million small businesses to ensure that they have confidence and certainty going forward. We are lucky that we have a Minister for Small Business in the member for Franklin who is passionate and committed to helping small businesses thrive. By backing Australian small business, we are backing Australia's future economic growth. We are supporting local communities to whom small businesses provide jobs, revenue and services, strengthening these communities. By building small business resilience, we build the resilience of the nation. Thank you.
The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 8 for a motion in relation to the critical minerals production tax incentive.
So, I move the motion. Sorry. No, that's all right. Cool. Okay, I move the motion relating to the critical minerals production tax incentive in the terms of which it appears on the notice paper.
Is the motion second?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Member for Swan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I moved this motion because I believe in a future made in Australia, a future that is built on a pathway to net zero emissions, and that pathway runs right through our national resource sector. We are a lucky country, blessed with amazing solar and wind resources above the ground, but also blessed with critical minerals and rare earths below the ground. And these are the things that we need to transition to a clean energy. And these resources, where are they? They're right under our feet. And it only makes sense for Labor to invest in these critical minerals future. There's a $17 billion production tax incentive, which is a cornerstone of that plan. And it's not about funding, it's about building a future made here in Australia. This incentive is designed to create jobs, support local and regional communities, and drive the future of our economy. And let's be clear, there's no handouts here. Companies will only receive a tax credit if they process critical minerals onshore, because we can make them here, and under Labor's strategic vision, we will. So what's the problem with making more things here in Australia? I don't see one. What's stopping us? The opposition has mixed messages and has a lack of clarity. You might recall the Leader of the Opposition's take on Labor's critical minerals investment program. It's hard to keep on track because he says one thing on the East Coast, dismissing it as tax cuts for billionaires, and another thing in WA when he falls back to his usual line. Well, we'll have more to say about that. But when? When will he be clear with Australians? Just a few weeks ago, he was attacking Labor's vision to build a future made in Australia. Even his deputy joined in, saying that they would oppose the plan. So what's the real stance? Are they wanting to support a vital industry for WA, or sticking to the same tired script of negativity? The truth is, the Coalition has turned its back on the resource sector. The Shadow Treasurer opposes the tax incentive. Why? It makes no sense to not foster a future in critical minerals, especially one that keeps processing onshore and creates jobs and supports local families and supports regional communities. On nuclear, they're also all over the place too. When will the opposition leader come clean on how much this plan will actually cost? This is the standard that they're living up to. Confusion, flip-flopping, depending on where they are and the time of the day, depending on which side of the country they're on and who their audience is. They're not really interested in Western Australia. They only say what they think people want them to hear on the West Coast. They're not genuine, they don't get it. The Liberals are known for inaction and turning their backs. And let's not forget, when they were in power, the ground approvals ground to a halt because they cut the Environment Department resources by 40%. We've doubled that since taking office because we're not sitting on our hands. We have a plan and we're implementing it. We're engaged with the resource sector because we understand it. And I understand it, having worked in the industry for more than 15 years. And I've seen that firsthand of what happens when we plan to invest. And I witnessed that in Campbelda, a nickel mining town. That's why I'm in a unique position to appreciate how crucial it's support onshore processing of critical minerals. By doing so, we can seize the opportunity and create good jobs, local jobs, jobs for the future, jobs for families, jobs that build a community. We're not turning our back on the resource sector or on the people who depend on it for their livelihoods. We're standing with them, investing in their future, because their future is our future, and ensuring that Australia is prosperous. I move this motion because I encourage all the members of the House to support it, because in doing so is turning their back on the resource sector. We can't afford to do that. Let's build that future right here in Australia.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Sturt. It's been, I'll do call for a second after the member, if you can second the motion again.
The motion and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I now call the member for Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and appreciate the opportunity to talk about the government and the tax treatment of the resources sector. They've certainly had a change of heart since the Rudd era of taxing the mining industry into oblivion, and we'll never forget the attacks on the sector that the Rudd government undertook when they sought to bring in their mining tax and sap all confidence out of the sector from the companies that were making investment decisions, competing against other economies around the world. We know in mining and resources, like anything in economics, there's always a finite resource for infinite demand, and there are a lot of places in the world that are pitching for investment in the mining and resources sector. Australia is but one of them. It's vital to our economy, and the Labor Party have had a very checkered history when it comes to the way in which they've introduced sovereign risk to that sector, and the Rudd government's mining tax is but one of many, and the sector certainly do not view the government as being friendly towards them. They view them with a great deal of suspicion, and that sector are concerned about what their future might be under a Labor government, and they're starting to find out more and more that this government is about picking winners, about issuing press releases saying that they support particular things, but the actions of the government and the performance of the government tends to lead to a dramatically different outcome. Now, the Liberal Party, we're the party of low tax. We want taxes to be as low as they can be, and that they want them to be as fair as they can be as well. We think that everyone should pay their fair share of tax, and you'd hope that that wasn't a point in dispute. And we also are not the party of picking winners and suggesting that government should be intervening in the free, proper operation of a market, because we'd like to see investments being decided on the basis of their merit, and also we'd like Australia to be a safe and reliable investment destination. Those are the principles that we bring to policy decisions, particularly industry policy decisions in this country. And the mining and resources sector, the critical minerals sector as part of that, know full well that they can rely when there are coalition governments to have steady, reliable, sensible policies that are about supporting businesses, giving them confidence to invest in our economy, giving them a confidence that the policy settings that are in place when they make that investment decision will endure and will stay in place as time goes forward. And the sort of investment profile and horizon in this sector, like many, is measured in at least the decades. And when you reflect on the very checkered approach and attitudes of this government, and particularly members within this government, that certainly consistency is not there when it comes to Labor. But the biggest threat, Deputy Speaker, is that the Labor Party, I hope, will not be in government for much longer, but even worse than that will be a future Labor government that is not in government alone, but instead is in government with another party, in coalition with the Greens, because if you're in the mining, minerals, resources sector, the most frightening thing for your business and for the tens of thousands of Australians that work directly in those businesses and the hundreds of thousands of Australians that work indirectly in that sector, the concept of a Labor Greens government means the end of that sector entirely. That's what the price of the Greens will be in doing a deal to form a minority government if the unhappy situation plays out, as the polls currently are indicating, that is on the cards. And so the mining and resources sector could have no more a nightmare scenario than a Labor Greens government where the Greens hold that minority Labor government to hostage on policies around mining. And we all know what the attitudes are already of the Greens on that topic, and we also know that they will insist on commitments that involve the end of so many of those vitally important businesses. So this motion talks about the critical minerals sector and mining and resources. We in the Coalition have a completely unimpeachable history in backing that sector, in supporting that sector, in giving that sector policy certainty and never introducing sovereign risk to that sector, and we're the only political force in this country that can say that.
Call the member for Bennelong.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As members of the government know all too well, the road to net zero emissions is paved with Australia's rich resources. Beneath our vast land lies a treasure trove of critical minerals, minerals that the world desperately needs to power the renewable energy technologies of tomorrow. Australia is blessed to be one of the world's largest exporters of lithium and the third largest producer of cobalt. These minerals, along with others like nickel and rare earth elements, are the backbone of the global transition to renewable energy. However, our role in this transition cannot and should not be limited to merely extracting these resources and shipping them overseas. We simply must do more than just dig up stuff and put it on a boat, because we've been doing that for way too long. Under Labor, we want to do more onshore, because it'll grow our economy and it'll create jobs here at home. And that's precisely what the Albanese government's $17 billion critical minerals production tax incentive is designed to achieve. This incentive is a game changer for industry and for onshore processing of critical minerals. It's a forward-thinking initiative that will drive investment into our critical minerals sector. It'll create secure, well-paying jobs that will support local communities and build industries that are critical for the future of the global economy. Our policies are about ensuring that Australia becomes not just a supplier of raw materials, but a leader in the global supply chain for renewable energy technologies. Our production tax credits are a targeted, smart use of our tax system to solve big problems, leverage our competitive advantage, and enhance Australia's prosperity. If companies don't process these critical minerals onshore, they don't receive a tax credit. It's as simple as that. This low-risk approach that will grow our critical minerals industry and create jobs for future generations. But as usual, Deputy Speaker, the Liberals and Nationals seem to be unable to decide whether they support Australian jobs, Australian manufacturing and the Australian critical minerals sector. The Leader of the Opposition has been flying back and forth across the country, saying one thing in Western Australia and another on the East Coast. And his best mate, the Shadow Treasurer, has made his opposition to this policy clear, effectively turning his back on the critical minerals sector that is so crucial to our nation's decarbonised future. They claim to support the resources sector in one breath, only to undermine it in the next. This duality shows just how out of touch they are with the realities of the industry and the needs of our nation. Unlike those opposite, our government has been consistent in its support for the critical minerals sector. Whether on the West Coast or the East Coast or anywhere else, our message is the same. We will back Australia's critical minerals industry to thrive, create jobs and help decarbonise the world. Because the global demand for critical minerals is surging. The world needs lithium, the world needs our cobalt and nickel, and other minerals to produce batteries, wind turbines and solar panels that are essential for the global transition to clean energy. And this presents a golden opportunity for Australia to cement its place in the world as a renewable energy superpower. Our key trading partners like the United States, Japan, Korea, India and the UK, even the EU, are all racing to diversify their sources of critical minerals. They are seeking reliable partners who can ensure the resilience of global supply chains. And unlike the Liberals and Nationals, Labor is stepping up to meet this challenge. We're strengthening our strategic partnerships with our allies through the Australia-United States Climate, Critical Minerals and Clean Energy Transformation Compact, which includes a ministerial-level task force to drive collaboration in this space. Our government won't sit by and ignore this vital part of our resources sector, as those opposite did for a decade. We will unashamedly support critical mineral processing onshore so that our nation can capitalise on this golden opportunity to create good, well-paid jobs here in Australia and ensure that Australia remains at the forefront of the global transition to renewable energy. We're at such an important juncture here, Deputy Speaker. We can go down the path of the opposition and not support our critical mineral sector and not support local manufacturing, and along with it, miss out on all the opportunities that will present themselves, or we can invest in a future made in Australia. We can invest in the jobs of the future and we can help the world decarbonise.
Thank you. There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in the order of the day for the next sitting, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 9 for a motion in relation to geopolitical instability.
Member for Fisher.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to geopolitical instability in the term in which it appears in the notice paper. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is no doubt that we are now living in a world which has not seen the sort of geopolitical instability as since the end of the Second World War. I don't think there is too much doubt about that from anybody. Madam Deputy Speaker, the late great Senator Jim Molan said this: Australia is operating in a strategy-free environment. Even more than tanks and ships and planes, Australia needs a national security strategy and a government that can deliver it. I want to pay tribute to the late great Jim Molan, who worked so assiduously in his public life as a parliamentarian and long before it, and the work specifically that he did to try and bring national attention to the need for a national security strategy. We know that from the Director General of ASIO, Mike Burgess, in his threat assessment in February this year and last year, that foreign interference and espionage has overtaken the threat as the number one threat in this country, more so than even terrorism. Foreign interference, foreign influence, espionage is being done on our shores and from offshore, attacking us as we speak. Our critical infrastructure as a nation, our critical infrastructure as vital businesses that provide that to Australians is under constant attack from governments such as the Chinese Communist Party, Russia, North Korea and Iran at unprecedented amounts. These countries and others are constantly testing our capability to defend the critical infrastructure that we have in this country. And as Jim has talked about in the past, there's no point having a wonderful defence strategy if you don't have an overarching national security strategy. A national defence strategy is just one element of a national security strategy. In these day and age, when we are being attacked, particularly from a cyber perspective, we need to have that overall encompassing whole of society approach. We need to ensure that not only is our ADF at its best to be able to defend this nation, but we need to be able to defend all of our critical infrastructure, our private industry, industry that are providing manufacturing for our local for defence industry. These things are critical. Sadly, we know that this government is asleep at the wheel in relation to defence. They scrapped the $1 billion national space mission for Earth observation. They scrapped it. When I was in the US last year, there were US officials coming up to me and speaking to me off the record, absolutely incredulous as to why this government, the Labor government, would be scrapping the construction of 4 satellites. The first time that Australia would have that sort of capability is now dead. This government has overseen $80 billion in cuts to defence. They are absolutely asleep at the wheel when it comes to border security. There's a lot more to border security than just having Border Force, and this government clearly is asleep at the wheel, as we've seen with the NZYQ case, hundreds of people being released into the community, and of course now what we're seeing in relation to people coming from Gaza without appropriate security checks. This government needs to get cracking on AUKUS Pillar 2 to increase the technology that comes from Pillar 2. It needs to ensure that our food, our fuel and our skilled workforce has this sort of security that would only come from an overall encompassing, community-wide national security strategy that involves state and local governments across the country. Only a national government can provide that sort of leadership. Sadly, this lot are asleep at the wheel. I implore the government to look very, very seriously at this. It's an important project, and it's something that Jim Molan has been pushing and I've been pushing now for a long time.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Adelaide.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to commence at the beginning of this speech with some remarks on the motion moved by the member for Fisher by joining him in paying tribute at the end of the motion where he speaks about Senator Jim Moylan, AO and DSC. As members be aware, Senator Moylan had a long and distinguished military career serving in the Australian Army for more than 40 years and reaching the rank of Major General. He served in Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, East Timor, Malaysia, Germany, United States and Iraq, and he was made an Officer of the Order of Australia. Deputy Speaker, of course, Senator Moylan was a great Australian, and may he rest in peace. Deputy Speaker, we live in a world where some nations seek to increase their access to resources and capital. And there's nothing wrong with that. All nations want to increase their resources, their capital, but some of these nations that were mentioned earlier by the member for Fisher are looking at doing it in an illegal and through immoral means. We only have to observe recent events in the Ukraine to see the devastating impact this can have on a population that has been invaded. And even though there is an embargo on Russia, we know and we can see how they're still getting some of their products out illegally through some of these rogue nations, including Iran and a whole range of others. And this is something that's really worrying the EU at the moment. Deputy Speaker, the devastation that it's had on the Ukraine and the impact this has an enormous impact on a population that has been invaded, And even though in World War II we were never invaded, we came incredibly close to it. In your neck of the woods in the Northern Territory, we know that it was bombed. There was real enemy on our shores. And sadly, Deputy Speaker, we have to do everything we can. So invasions like Russia on Ukraine, on other nations that we've seen around the world, do not happen in a way that it is illegal and a way that just isn't appropriate at all. Sadly, this is not a new phenomenon, as I said. Just last month, I attended a commemorative service in Cyprus for the 50th anniversary of the Turkish illegal invasion in Cyprus, which is still a tremendous source of pain to so many people after 50 years. An illegal invasion where there's still 40,000 foreign troops on the soil of a sovereign country. Certainly Turkey has to work out which side of the fence they're on. I know they're members of NATO, but at the same time getting extremely close with the nations that the member for Fisher mentioned, with Russia, with Iran and many other nations. Deputy Speaker, as the National Defence Strategy released in April 2024 confirms, we confront the most challenging strategic circumstances since the Second World War. And we do so at a time when Australia's economic connection to the world has never been greater. And we need to develop a more integrated, focused Australian Defence Force so we can defend Australia and our immediate region, protect our economic connection to the world and contribute with our partners to regional security and stability. Deputy Speaker, Australia's acquisition of conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines is fundamental to this. This AUKUS agreement that we have is absolutely fundamental to this, and will ensure we have a defence force with a much greater capacity to deter a potential adversary's attempt to protect power against Australia. Our government is committed, absolutely committed to securing a strong and safe future for all Australians. When we came to government, Australians were more vulnerable to cyber attacks than citizens of any other developed country. Too many Australian citizens and businesses were left out in the cold by the former coalition government that had fallen asleep at the wheel on cyber security. We know this complacency opened the door for attacks that have compromised the data of millions of Australians and left Australia years behind where we should be in cyber security. So this Albanese Labor government is doing the hard work in cyber security that should have started a decade ago. We now have a dedicated cyber security minister in Cabinet and have appointed Australia's first national cyber security coordinator. So working with industry and the community, the government, the Albanese government 2023 to 2030 Australian cyber security strategy sets out how we're making Australia a harder target, how we'll help Australians bounce back from cyber attacks and how we're fighting back against cyber criminals. Now, while no other country can reduce cyber risks to zero, these changes will significantly strengthen Australia's cyber defences.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Flinders.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to support the motion moved by my friend, the member for Fisher, regarding the current environment of geopolitical instability which we face and the fundamental failure of this Albanese government to both comprehend, grasp and act in necessary ways to keep Australians safe. The member for Fisher and I both serve on the Parliamentary Joint Committee for Intelligence and National Security and also the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Social Media and Australian Society. That is no coincidence because, as we know, social media has become one of the principal vectors for both foreign interference from abroad and radicalisation and extremism within our own borders. Exactly a year ago this month, a significant report was released by the Australian Senate under the stewardship of another great coalition contributor to the national security debate, Senator James Paterson, now Shadow Minister for Home Affairs. That report provided a comprehensive analysis of the tactics used by foreign interests to disturb the Australian democracy via disinformation campaigns, harassment of our diaspora communities and gathering intelligence on individuals. The report identified a number of responsibilities of the social media platforms which operate in Australia, including measures to increase transparency, label state-affiliated media and posting, and to disclose government directions regarding content. The report suggested a number of possible and responsible government actions, including banning some high-risk apps on government devices, establishing a National Security Technology Office and supporting independent research to counter interference. Finally, it also called on civil society to invest in public education, to lift our level of digital literacy and to support diaspora communities to build resilience against foreign interference. The report did not pull its punches, stating quite clearly, foreign interference and espionage threaten the things that we value most about our country, our social cohesion, our trusted democracy and our freedoms. It recognised the role of social media as a potential highway for ill-intentioned content, citing, social media itself is not the threat, but it is a vector for foreign interference. It was clear about the contemporary risk we all face, warning us that authoritarian regimes like China and Russia are deploying new methods for cyber-enabled disinformation activities as part of a broader, integrated strategic campaign to advance their own national interests at Australia's expense. And finally, it recognised the particular vulnerability of our diaspora communities. Many people living in Australia are not free of the long hand of their repressive former governments, reaching across the seas to continue to engage in acts of intimidation, harassment and violence, including through social media. The use of social media as a method of radicalisation and extremism is of equal concern, particularly for our domestic intelligence and national security bodies. As recently as last week, the Director-General of ASIO, in an ABC interview, indicated that these concerns have in no way diminished in the last year. In discussion with David Spears, Mike Burgess AM said, "The trouble with the internet is that it is the greatest incubator of violent extremism, and social media, the downside, is the greatest accelerator of violent extremism. The algorithms companies use to direct content, a youth only has to search something once and then in their search feed they get plenty of violent extremism or extremism material which is unhelpful and hurtful for their young, forming brains." Last week, my colleagues on the Social Media Committee had the benefit of a briefing from Audrey Tang, the former Digital Minister of Taiwan, regarding measures that country has taken to fight foreign interference and safeguard democracy. Taiwan is one of the most digitally enabled populations and digitally enabled governments, but that comes with obvious risks as one of the most targeted for disinformation from foreign governments. Last year, the former Taiwanese president described the dual challenge faced by this most determined democracy. We let the public have knowledge and tools that refute and report false or misleading information and maintain a cautious balance between maintaining information freely and refusing information manipulation. In her comments to the Social Media Committee last week, the Digital Minister informed us that even though Taiwan has the second highest religious diversity in the world, it now consistently ranks as one of the lowest polarised countries. Taiwan looks beyond what is said online to where it comes from, data transparency of platforms, the way an algorithm prioritises information. Importantly, Taiwan teaches school children not only how to consume media, but how to contribute media online and discourse. We have much to learn from the bold approaches of others.
Thank you. I now call the member for Hasluck.
Deputy Speaker, I thank the member for Fisher for raising this important matter. The member's motion calls for a national security strategy. We last had a national security strategy under the Gillard government, and it goes to much of what the member for Fisher seeks, such as objectives to protect and strengthen our sovereignty, to ensure a safe and resilient population, to secure our assets, infrastructure and institutions, and to promote a favourable international environment and more. And I'm happy to table that because whilst the member for Fisher is not a new member, he clearly did not know that document existed. And I think it's even more ironic that he's calling for a new national security strategy 2 years into the Albanese government when the coalition governments of Abbott, Turnbull, Morrison didn't bother. I note also that the member's motion presupposes the Albanese government will be in office in 2027, and I appreciate that member's confidence in that regard, whilst taking nothing for granted, of course, in Hasluck. But going to the specifics of the motion, we can see that these are all, in fact, subjects of action by this government. In just 2 years, the Albanese government has done more work and achieved more than the coalition government did in 9, and the member does know this. One of the first actions of the Albanese government was to engage the Honourable Stephen Smith and Sir Angus Houston to provide the government with the Defence Strategic Review, arguably the most important overarching document in the defence and security space since the 1986 DIB report. The Defence Strategic Review will inform government policies across defence preparedness, capability and posture for the decades to come. The 2024 National Defence Strategy is the first of the biennial strategies recommended by the DSR. It is wide-ranging, covering the strategic environment, strategy, structure, bases, investment, partnership, industry personnel and resourcing. In relation to international partnerships, I recently attended exercise Pitch Black in Darwin as a guest of the RAF. Members should be aware that over 20 nations attended this with over 140 aircraft, and our international partnerships in defence are truly our great asset. The 2024 Defence Industry Development Strategy drills down into the defence industry needs to support our future security, including procurement, innovation, workforce and exports. And the 2024 Integrated Investment Program outlines our capability investment priorities across land, sea and air, as well as space and the cyber fields that the member refers to in his motion. So there is a certain sense in which the member's motion is about a good 2 years too late. Then the member's motion acknowledges the work of the Senator Jim Molan in the defence sphere, and I add my thanks to the late Senator. In the last sittings, the House voted to pass the Defence Amendment Parliamentary Joint Committee on Defence Bill 2024. That bill was passed without the vote of the member for Fisher. The Coalition opposed the bill on spurious grounds, pretending that it was appropriate to gerrymander the membership of the committee in a way that was arguably both unconstitutional and undemocratic. The member and all of his colleagues know that the membership structure proposed in the legislation for the Joint Committee on Defence is the same as that for the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security. And the Coalition are not complaining about that committee either, not now or previously, so it is quite clear that they are in fact just playing silly games. And I'm sure the member for Fisher, when he reflects on this, can be nothing but embarrassed, because he knows that while he can't stop the member for Dixon from playing silly games with the legislation, we shouldn't see that done with legislation that goes to national security. And let's not beat around the bush, because if the Liberals and Nationals stood up and took national security seriously, we could already have the Joint Committee on Defence operating today. That committee would already be reviewing the strategies and the documents that I've referred to and already starting to play its important role in helping to keep Australia safe. The fact that it is not done, it is down to the Coalition dragging its feet. So we've reformed the oversight of the security agencies. We'll continue that work. We have a Minister for Cyber Security in Cabinet. We've elevated the importance of critical minerals. We've invested more in border security than the opposition did. And we've done groundbreaking work in both AI and quantum. So I welcome any motion in relation to national security, which is the first duty of any federal government. If, however, the member for Fisher wants to bring motions like this one, he should have first ensured that his party isn't the one delaying action in this area. And he should get his party to pass the JCOD bill without this ridiculous, spurious delay.
Thank you. There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next sitting, and I call the clerk.
Private members' business, notice number 10, motion relating to the Brisbane 2032 Olympics.
I call the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move the motion relating to the Brisbane 2032 Olympics in the terms of which it appears on the notice paper. Deputy Speaker, we know the world doesn't stop for sport, but every 4 years the Olympics and Paralympic Games give us the opportunity to focus on something outside of our everyday concerns and worries and to feel we're part of something bigger and something special, something noble. The Olympics and Paralympics are multicultural melting pots of elite talent from every corner of the globe, and in less than 8 years' time, Brisbane and Queensland will proudly host these events. The Olympics and Paralympics are the stages for the ultimate drama. There are charismatic personalities, fascinating backstories, heartwarming displays of sportsmanship, heartbreak when it goes wrong, and then the joy and celebration of triumph. Whether that triumph is making the final, achieving a personal best, or even winning gold, silver or bronze. And when the Games are over, we are left with wonderful memories. In the case of Brisbane 2032, memories won't be all we take away from the Games. As a member of the Brisbane 2032 board, I can confirm that the Brisbane Games will leave a lasting beneficial legacy for not only Brisbane and South East Queensland, but all of Queensland, in fact, all of the nation. The Games are being organised with the new norms of the International Olympic Committee front of mind. The 2032 organisers describe it this way: they're determined to make the Games fit into the host city and region and not the other way around. A key part of this is the 2032 legacy strategy called Elevate 2042. The strategy includes the feedback from more than 14,000 submissions during a year of community consultation. This resulted in 4 focus areas for preparing for the Olympics: health and inclusion, connecting people and places, a better future for our environment and an economy of the future. Brisbane 2032 is being planned accordingly. We're looking at a 20-year pipeline of economic benefits from the Games, starting with direct benefits for local businesses by engaging them to update existing infrastructure, part of the new norm for the Olympics. And I note that I'll be in Cairns in a few weeks' time, an Olympic city, looking at some of their infrastructure. The Games are tipped to create more than 90,000 jobs in Queensland and 120,000 nationally. Businesses in all cities hosting events will benefit. Obviously Brisbane, but the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, Townsville, Cairns, and even Sydney and Melbourne. People living in and visiting these cities will benefit for years, including prior to the Games, from improved sporting and event venues, more efficient public transport, and in South East Queensland, increased capacity for road and rail corridors. An expected 3.6 million international visitors are predicted to visit our shores for the Games. This will deliver a forecast $4.6 billion boom for tourism in Queensland and $8.5 billion across Australia. It will build upon Australia's image as being a safe and politically stable, wonderful destination to visit. There are also social and cultural benefits of hosting the Games. The opportunities to showcase the arts, our musicians, our artists, our performers, from the high school level right through to some of the world-renowned performers. And visitors will be able to immerse themselves in the world's oldest living culture with First Nations experiences and perspectives throughout. The Games are a platform to boost and inspire community participation in an active lifestyle and sport, something I'm particularly passionate about as the parliamentary enemy of diabetes. And they're being planned to promote active travel to events. Brisbane will promote climate-positive events with low emissions public transport for all athlete movements. The Albanese Labor government is investing $3.5 billion into Brisbane 2032 infrastructure, seizing this generational opportunity to bring forward planned development in time for the Games and then leave a lasting legacy for the community afterwards. It's important to note that the Queensland Government is working to ensure costs remain within agreed funding levels. Their focus, as it should be, is on the community benefit of being the host city and then 10 years after. I'd like to finish by congratulating the 2024 Olympic Games team members on their fantastic efforts in Paris. I'm looking forward to cheering on the Australian Paralympic team when competition starts on the 28th of August. The one benefit I haven't mentioned yet is the inspiration these athletes have given young Australians. Many will already be training in the pool, on the track, on BMX circuits and on courts, and dreaming of emulating the feats of their heroes in 8 years' time. We look forward to cheering them on in LA and then in Brisbane and Queensland in 2032.
Is there a seconder for the motion?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Kennedy.
My party that I belong to, KP, tenaciously opposes the Olympic Games. And you'll listen, you'll stay there and listen. You spat upon, your Olympic Games spat upon Christianity. You spat upon Christianity. You spat upon Christianity with the most infantile, puerile, undergraduate. Madam Speaker, is he going to shut up or will I shut him up?
Come on.
Oh, there won't be a trial.
Order.
There'll be medical research for you. Now, Madam Speaker, is he going to shut up and allow me to speak? And I want an extra minute here because he took it off me.
So, member for Kennedy, you have the floor, so proceed.
Well, he's had the floor up to date, right? And he doesn't he doesn't like me saying that they spat upon Christianity. My friend, you enjoy democracy because the Magna Carta was written by Archbishop Langton. That's who wrote it, right? Pax Romana was brought to the world by Constantine because he became a Christian. The most brutal regime on earth, Rome, was Christianised and was civilised, and I think that that's an accurate description, Madam Speaker. They spat upon Christianity, right? Now, the 6 greatest scientists in human history, Pastor Galileo, Einstein, Faraday, Mendel, all of them were profound Christian believers. Mendel, in fact, was a monk, and Faraday, in fact, was a preacher of religion. Now, they're the 6th greatest scientists in human history. Who destroyed communism? Murdered 78 million people. Who destroyed it? Gorbachev. And his first comment to the world was, when we go down upon our knees at night, we all pray to the same God. And the world that I lived in was different than the world that I was brought up in, with the terror of the atomic bomb every day of our lives threatening us. And it was cured by the great man Gorbachev and the Pope of Rome and Charlie Wilson's war, who were all profound Christians and motivated by the Christianity. Who got rid of slavery? We Christians did. Who led the civil rights movement in the United States? We Christians did. Now, to see it spat upon by this organisation, and this organisation be lauded by people in this parliament. Now, there's the little matter of cost, right? Now, a big party for Brisbane, and I don't think there's too many people in Brisbane anxious about it. No one else applied for it. No one else in the world wanted it. So don't skite about getting it, because no one else in the world wanted it. And unlike most people in this place, I was Olympic qualifying in long jump. I didn't go, and I won't go into that. Madam Speaker, I just want to come back to the issue of cost. $30 billion. If you average out the cost of the Olympic Games, the last 4 Olympic Games, it averages out, with a little bit of inflation there, of course, $30 billion. This is from a budget of $50 billion. Now, what could I do with that $30 billion? In far north Queensland, we had 5 deaths on the roads in 2 weeks, as we have 74 deaths in 14 years. We had 74 deaths on the... We need a tunnel. And Brisbane's got 36 kilometres of tunnels, and North Queensland hasn't got 1 kilometre of tunnel. Brisbane's got 1.2 million people. We've got 1 million people. And what you're watching is the tyranny of the majority. And a good example of it here this evening. When I tried to defend Christianity, the member kept interrupting all the time. Obviously, he hates Christianity, and that's probably why he's back in the Olympics. That's probably why he's backing the Olympics.
Yes.
I'd ask the member to withdraw that comment. That slur, that dangerous comment.
He's tried to take up all my time, and I can't blame him, because I'd hate to be sitting there listening that the state's going to be up for $30 billion on some fun time for a part of Brisbane. Whilst the rest of the state pays for it, of course, because most of the state's revenue is coming out of the northern half of the state, where 1 million people live, and we can't even be given 1 kilometre tunnel by a city this man represents that gave us has got 36 kilometres of tunnels in Brisbane. Tyranny of the majority. Tyranny of the majority. Madam Speaker, Europe, after collapse of Rome, was set upon by vultures from all sides. And people that defended that were the Crusaders in the Battle of Lepanto,
Member for Kennedy.
the Battle of Vienna.
Thank you. I now call the member for Hunter.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I stand here today as a proud 5-time Olympian. There is no greater feeling of pride than representing your country at an Olympic Games in a sport in which you've dedicated your entire life to. The only thing that could possibly beat this feeling is being able to do it at a home Olympics. Unfortunately, I didn't get this experience, Deputy Speaker. I just missed out on qualification for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. But I'm incredibly excited for the future crop of athletes who will have the honour and privilege of representing their country on home soil at the 2032 Brisbane Olympic Games. Speaker, we are a nation who admires and idolises our sporting and Olympic heroes. Our athletes deserve their chance to feel this admiration at a home Olympic Games, and they deserve to have their friends and family supporting them in their own backyard. We've all just witnessed the Olympic Games in Paris. Many of us stayed up until all hours of the night cheering on athletes. The Games dominated our TV screens, took over our newspapers and became a part of most conversations with our loved ones and our workmates. There's just something truly special about the Olympic Games. It unites us all, bringing together people from all walks of life, regardless of their differences. The Australian people deserve the chance to witness iconic Olympic moments right in front of them. to pack the Olympic Aquatic Centre or the track and field stadium and hopefully the shooting range, cheering on our athletes to gold medals. Going to the Games, let alone winning an Olympic medal or Paralympic medal, is the stuff that dreams are made of. And the best part is, in 2032, this is all going to happen on home soil. This is why, as a government, we continue to work closely with the Queensland Government on the 2032 Brisbane Olympic and Paralympic Games. There are a lot of benefits that can come from being the host of the Olympic Games, and it's so important that we use the next 8 years to make sure that we're able to make the most of these benefits. The social benefit of the Games are estimated to be somewhere between $3.5 billion for Queensland and up to $9.1 billion nationally. The economic benefits are going to be huge. By looking at countries who have previously hosted the Olympic Games, we have seen that the international tourism to host cities and the nation as a whole jumps not only during the Olympics and Paralympics, but before and after as well, Speaker. We expect this to be the case in Brisbane as a result of the Games in 2032. The Games are expected to attract 3.6 million international visitors. The Games are also a massive generator of jobs. In Queensland, the Games are expected to generate more than 90,000 jobs per year and nationally more than 120,000 jobs. The 10-year lead-up and the 10-year legacy of the Games together are forecast to generate increased international tourism and trade of $4.6 billion for Queensland and $8.5 billion for the nation. The Games are a win for everyone. We are committed to making the 2032 Olympic Games the most successful ever. We want to support athletes to achieve great sporting success through high-performance systems focused on getting more Aussies up on the podium. We also know that if the Games are going to be a success, we need to make sure we build world-class facilities. That's why we are committing up to $3.4 billion for venue infrastructure projects to support the Games. We want to remain the #1 supporter of these Games by being a funding partner in delivering Games venues in time for 2032 to make sure it's an Olympics to remember. I also want to note that the Queensland Government is prioritising community benefits whilst ensuring costs remain within the agreed funding envelope of $7.1 billion to be shared between the state and Commonwealth governments, which is important in making these Games successful. 2032 is a long way away and there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm confident we'll host one of the greatest Olympic Games of our lifetime. I can't wait for the 2032 Olympic Games. And Deputy Speaker, we've heard newspaper reports, we've heard many reports on the TV saying that we're behind time, we're this, we're that, we're not going to have the best Games ever. Look at Sydney. Sydney, we had all the naysayers saying the exact same things before the Sydney Olympics. Right. The Sydney Olympics is one of the best Olympics that have ever been held anywhere in the world. And I can guarantee you that Brisbane will be the same. So to the naysayers that are saying this won't happen and this will never get there, shame on you, shame on all of you. We're Australians, we're proud of our sporting success and we'll continue to show our sporting success all the way. So let's get behind the 2032 Olympics and let's show the world what Aussies can do. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi!
Call the member for Groom.
Thank you so much, Speaker. How could I possibly follow a speech on the Olympics from an Olympian? It's an impossible task. It can't be done, but I'll give it a go. Member for Hunter does a great job talking up sport in Australia, and I agree with his enthusiasm. And I think it's important that we do stand up and congratulate everyone who competed in the Olympic Games wearing the green and gold. Once you're wearing those colours, you're ours. We get behind them, and it's been fantastic to watch that. Speaker, like a lot of families, I sat with my kids watching a whole range of sports. Sports I'll probably never watch again until the next Olympics rolls around, but I think that's part of what it is, giving kids a view of what they can do, what they can achieve, and that's one of the best things about the Olympics. Watched a little bit of shooting. Your Turkish compatriot, Speaker, the Turkish shooter certainly drew a bit of attention. I'm not sure how he goes against you, the member for Hunter, but. Look, Speaker, I do want to talk about, because I think there is an important conversation about the Olympics, this role they play in the national psyche, what they do for us as a country, and thinking back to the Sydney Olympics, it's a great point, what it did for us. And I think it's right for us to turn towards those 2032 Olympics and really see what we want to get out of it. But look, I do want to pay some tribute to the people who got that bid off the ground, because people don't remember this. The Brisbane 2032 Olympics was originally the South East Queensland Olympics. And it was people, Graham, absolutely. No, and I think it's important to raise these people out. You know who else it was? It was my former mayor for Toowoomba Regional Council, Paul Antonio. Paul spoke about this at the South East Queensland Council of Mayors and was laughed at. There's no way you can have a regional Olympic Games. There's no way South East Queensland mayors can get together and pull an Olympics together. And to his credit, when the state government of the day wasn't confident on it, when the federal government wasn't confident, Paul and other members from that, Graham Quirk as the Brisbane Council, representing Brisbane Council, pushed on. And the Olympic Games morphed and people started to get behind it. It became, over time, the Brisbane Games. So I think it is reasonable, whilst we're looking forward to it, I think it's important to look back at the people who pursued this idea that got us those games. But Speaker, look, one of the issues that we've had, why I raise that is because unfortunately since that time, the role of South East Queensland in the Games has diminished. It's diminished significantly. And I think that's unfortunate because it was from these regional heartlands that this idea came about. Speaker, we went through a very difficult conversation in Toowoomba about the upgrades for the Toowoomba Sports Ground that were proposed to be part of this Olympics. And look, this was really a substandard offering to the people of Toowoomba. We weren't going to get an actual football game. What we were going to get is a warm-up game, preliminary warm-up game in Toowoomba, and rather than get legacy infrastructure, what we were offered was temporary stands added onto the Toowoomba Stadium. So when you hear about temporary stands, what this means, to put it in context, Speaker, is that you don't have to have noise abatement, you don't have to have light abatement, and unfortunately this stadium's in the middle of a suburban area. So the local residents quite rightly raised their concerns about having a temporary structure brought into play. So look, this was a problem, Speaker. The people of Toowoomba spoke up when Mr Quirk ran his review of Olympic infrastructure, and he came back and he removed the Toowoomba Stadium from the plans for the 2032 Olympics. And it was a good move because the people in and around it did not support that stadium. It had no legacy benefits for the area. So what we find ourselves in now is having a very direct conversation with the organisers of the 2032 Olympics in Toowoomba about what would actually be legacy infrastructure for our region. And what comes back time and time again is the equestrian centre proposal that's been put forward at the showgrounds. Speaker, we have somewhere around 60% of Queensland's thoroughbreds come from my area. Equestrian is a huge sport, and overwhelmingly, it is a sport dominated by women. My sister was one of them, and we saw this change. You go to a pony club nowadays, this is a sport that women absolutely dominate. It's a great thing, and it's something that I think that our region can get behind. So, Speaker, whilst we're reflecting on what was an excellent Olympics for Australia, I hope we can look forward and see that we need that legacy infrastructure coming into regional areas. There are areas that brought the Olympics to Brisbane, the ones who believed in it all the way through.
The member's time has expired. I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Newcastle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, I rise to speak on this motion put forward by my friend and colleague, the member for Moreton, this evening. Excitement for Brisbane 2032 is certainly high after the amazing efforts of our sensational Olympians at Paris in 2024. In total, over 460 Australian athletes competed for medals in 329 events. Our Olympians gave it their all in Paris and went on to win 53 medals. That's 18 gold, 19 silver and 16 bronze, making Paris our most successful Games to date. If I could take a moment to just reflect on the fantastic efforts of Team Newcastle at the Paris Games. I want to extend a massive congratulations to Newcastle's Jess Hill, who claimed silver in an incredible run in the women's 1500 metres, where she became the first Australian woman to win an Olympic medal at a distance further than 800 metres. Nathan Power, a product of the Hunter Hurricanes water polo team, co-captained the Aussie Sharks, steering the side to quarterfinals before a loss to the United States sent the Sharks to the classification rounds. The Hockeyroos, with the assistance of South Newcastle striker Mariah Williams, and the Kookaburras, with the help of North Newcastle teammates Matt Dawson and Kai Wilcott, made it through to the quarterfinals in the men's and women's hockey. Newcastle surfer Tyler Wright's campaign ended in the quarterfinals after a strong debut in her opening rounds. Former Newcastle Jet Emily Van Egmond and the former Adamstown Rosebud Claire Wheeler both featured in the Matildas campaign for gold in the women's football. Local track superstar Rose Davies gave it her all in the women's 500 metre and became the first Australian woman to run the distance in under 15 minutes. Reigning women's pentathlon Oceania champion Newcastle's Genevieve Van Rensburg made her Olympic debut at Paris in the modern pentathlon. And last but certainly not least, Wallsend's Jacqueline Nichelle made her Olympic debut in the 71 kilogram women's weightlifting category. I know I speak on behalf of all Novocastrians when I say we are so proud of you all. You have represented Newcastle brilliantly, you've represented Australia brilliantly, and you continue to inspire the next generation of local sports men and women. And while we celebrate the success and achievements of our Olympians, I'd also like to remind you that the race is only halfway through, with the Paralympic team set to make their debut in Paris for the Paralympics next week. I'd like to give a special shout out to local superstar Lauren Parker, who will compete at the Games for the second time in the para-triathlon. Sport plays such an important role in our communities, whether they be at the local, regional, state, national or global level. The success of Team Newcastle and Team Australia at the Paris Games has made the excitement and the anticipation ahead of Brisbane 2032 that much more palpable. For countless kids and young people out there today on the fields, courts, arenas, pitches, tracks and in the pools, the Games is the pinnacle of success. The lead up to Brisbane 2032 will be used as a platform to boost and inspire more community participation and promote an inclusive environment where women, girls and Australians of all abilities feel welcome. Over the next 8 years, we have the opportunity to maximise the benefits of hosting the Games. We will support athletes to achieve greater sporting success through a high-performance system focused on achieving enduring podium success. The Australian Government is committing up to $3.4 billion towards the Brisbane Olympic Games, which is set to generate billions of dollars in social and economic benefits for not just Brisbane, but our entire nation. Australia is a country which loves sport and it runs deep in our veins. We know that hosting an Olympic Games in Australia has profoundly positive impacts for the development of local sports and athletes, leaving a legacy that extends well beyond the Games. Bring on Brisbane 2032. Thank you.
I thank the member. There being no further speakers, the debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next day's sitting. I call the clerk.
Private members' business. Next order of the day, motion relating to community sporting infrastructure, resumption of debate.
The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Corangamite.
Deputy Speaker, there has been an overwhelming demand for the Albanese Government to Play Our Way program. It's a program that's all about investing in women's sport, and it is the single biggest package for women's sport ever, providing $200 million in funding to help not only our future Olympians, Paralympians, Matildas and Diamonds, but girls and women who just love to compete and play at the local level. And Deputy Speaker, it's been an amazing success, with many hundreds of clubs applying for the fund. What this shows is that the level of demand for investment in women's sporting facilities and equipment is huge.
The number of applications for this fund highlights the level of demand for funding that invests in women's change rooms, equipment and new sporting facilities. But while demand has been high, with over 1,600 applications from sporting clubs across the nation, our government remains committed to ensuring the department's process is fair, fulsome and respectful of the volunteers who work tirelessly to construct an application. This takes time. Deputy Speaker, while all things take time, the department has already contacted applicants of Stream 1 and informed those who are progressing to next stage of assessment for that stream. Unsuccessful applicants have also been notified. Organisations who applied for the participation and equipment stream of the fund will be provided an update in the coming weeks. And I can assure my local clubs their efforts have not gone unnoticed. I recently held a forum in my electorate of Corangamite to help communities apply for grants. There was much interest in the Play Our Way grant because the growing number of women playing male-dominated sports in my region is increasing, and there is a need for better facilities. Sports like football, basketball, soccer and cricket are seeing a massive surge of popularity amongst women in my rapidly growing region. And that's what this Play Our Way grant is all about. The program is designed to fund great ideas at a local level and across a range of sports to increase women's participation. It's an opportunity for local governments, community organisations, the not-for-profit sector and sporting organisations to show how they can create a better sporting landscape for women and girls across the country. So now, Deputy Speaker, I should remind the member for Durack that probity and integrity are key parts of the Play Our Way grant process, and the Albanese government is absolutely committed to ensuring the program is well managed. We know it's vital to have a robust process and ensure the best projects receive funding. We want to do this right. We do not want to rely on a colour-coded spreadsheet. And again, I want to assure all my local clubs that each application is thoroughly assessed and reviewed to ensure fairness to all applicants and to deliver the best outcomes for women and girls in communities across the country. We want to see grants go to those who need it most, and that's what we're delivering. I look forward to notifying my local clubs on the status of their grant applications very soon. What has been made clear is that there is a high demand to provide women and girls greater opportunities to access, participate and remain involved in sport and physical activity. The Albanese government recognises this. Too often, women have been changing in men's bathrooms, wearing hand-me-down boys' uniforms and playing on poorly maintained fields that boys' teams would refuse to play on. And we know that too many girls drop out of sport and never come back as adults. Play Our Way will address these issues to help women and girls enjoy sport for life. Deputy Speaker, in closing, we have recently seen a surge in sports participation as more opportunities and choices open up for women and girls. This is increasing participation in sport overall, which is a wonderful thing. Watching so many girls and women getting out and playing footy and cricket, it has been an absolute joy for me. For me, it's a priority that clubs have the resources to cater for girls and women to meet current standards and expectations, and that's what the Albanese government's commitment will deliver, and it's what the Play Our Way program will deliver. Thank you.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Casey.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, there's no doubt across the community of Casey, but also across all communities in Australia, that investing in sports infrastructure, particularly to drive female participation, is so important and so needed. Something that I've been speaking about for the 2.5 years that I've been a member of Parliament. I spent my life playing sport in my community, and I've seen over the years the facilities that are not up to standard, but I've also seen the positive impact that those facilities can have. And one facility in particular, the Mount Evelyn Recreation Reserve, was recently upgraded, finalised and opened. That was funded in a joint partnership between the federal, state and local council, and the former member for Casey, Tony Smith, was a strong advocate and secured that funding. And I remember when I was playing cricket at Hillsville against Mount Evelyn, the club rooms were old, they weren't welcoming, but when you look at the new club rooms, they are welcoming, they are fresh, they are revitalising the sporting community in Mount Evelyn. Mount Evelyn Football Club has led the way in many ways in women's participation, in AFL in particular, and their junior program is strong. So strong, in fact, that the Mount Evelyn under-16 girls won their premiership yesterday. So I want to send a shout out to the Mount Evelyn under-16 girls team who won that premiership. I've seen the facilities that they get to enjoy. I know it makes their participation a lot easier. And that's why so many people are frustrated with the delays that it has taken for the Albanese Labor government to implement the Play Our Way program. Because we need to be honest and we need to understand that this announcement was not in the works for the government. They weren't looking to spend any money on female sporting infrastructure until the Coalition announced our $250 million announcement for female sporting community infrastructure across the country. While the Prime Minister and the Minister for Sport were happy to attend the soccer and cheer on the Matildas, the Coalition was actually putting forward policies to deliver on that momentum that was being built. And what did we see just a week or two later? The government announced their own $20 million fund. But we know that the fund was an afterthought for the government because Senate estimates, and we've seen through different processes, that they rushed through a release to the department asking for a fund to be spun up in a week or two, and that was the first time that the department had heard about this program. So again, the Coalition leading the way on policy. It is good that the government followed us and announced $200 million, $250 would have been better, but it's taken over 12 months for anything to happen. Not a dollar has been spent despite that fanfare. And as David Peel, who's the secretary of the Seville Cricket Club, said recently in the Herald Sun, a good friend of mine, and I quote, "If we weren't successful in our application, which is fine, we'd rather know so that we can move on with our planning." That's probably the frustration with this one. And that is the frustration for many community groups across my electorate, across many other electorates. They've got this growth in female sport, but they don't have the facilities that match, and they're still waiting. They're waiting. I was lucky enough to visit two of my old clubs on the weekend, the Monbulk Soccer Club, Lilydale Montrose United. I've still got a connection to Lilydale Montrose United. My two children, my 8-year-old daughter and my 11-year-old son, play at the club, and I get to referee their games on the weekend when time allows, and to see the young boys and the young girls running around as equals on the field, enjoying all the benefits of sport, teammates, learning the rules, learning the pain of defeat, and the opportunity to grow is so valuable. And that's why we need to continue to invest in female infrastructure. This is a first step. It's a delayed step, but there's more that needs to be done. While I'm the member for Casey, Deputy Speaker, I'll continue to advocate for female sport facilities, because every person, every young man, every young girl and woman should be able to go to their club and participate in an equal playing field, and we know facilities make a big difference to that.
I thank the member. The question is that the motion be agreed to, and I call the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. And I'm not really surprised to hear that it's difficult for those opposite to comprehend a grant scheme with integrity at its heart. But nonetheless, I'm very prepared to talk about women's sports and girls' sports. In fact, one of the very first political acts I ever participated in was in primary school, when I organised a petition in my class for girls to be able to play soccer. So this is a cause very close and near and dear to my heart, and I'm really proud to be part of a government that wants to see more girls and women participate in sport. We're really proud to deliver one of Australia's largest and most comprehensive investments in women's sport, with funding and reforms to help more women play sport. This is the single biggest package for women's sport facilities ever. Play Our Way represents a $200 million fund to help our next Olympians, Paralympians, Matildas and Diamonds, and so many more athletes. I know how passionate my own local community in Chisholm is about this. They're really passionate about equality in sport and promoting girls' and women's participation. And I'm pleased that existing projects that I've been working on and advocating for will enhance women's and girls' participation through dedicated infrastructure. It was not too long ago that I had the privilege of turning the sod for a new pavilion at Mount Waverley Reserve, and I'm looking forward to seeing that project for the football, netball and cricket club advance, which is a really vital piece of community infrastructure that will mean facilities for girls and women and will further encourage their participation in sport. My community knows how important Play Our Way is. We know that too often women and girls are changing in men's bathrooms or in their cars, wearing hand-me-down boys' uniforms, playing with men's equipment on pool fields they would never let the boys play on. Too many girls too drop out of sport and never come back as women, and that's a particular issue with girls as they reach their teenage years. Play Our Way will address these issues to help women and girls enjoy sport for life. The Play Our Way grant program is robust and meticulous by design because we want to help clubs address participation barriers faced by women and girls. This program was designed by experts to deliver really excellent outcomes with lasting positive impact on a wide range of communities, funding great ideas at a local level and across a range of different sports. This is a wonderful opportunity for local governments, community organisations and the not-for-profit sector and sporting organisations to show how they can create a better sporting landscape for women and girls across the country. And that's what we want to do, Deputy Speaker, create a landscape for women and girls to participate in sport. And part of this is ensuring that the grant process has integrity. I'm really disappointed that the Coalition has seemingly learned nothing from their awful sports rorts debacle, where they funded women's facilities for clubs that didn't even have women's teams, simply because they thought it was politically advantageous. And I have to say that when I was elected, I was really shocked when I saw locally the extent to which grants were mishandled. I heard from a number of clubs, and this was really difficult to hear, who were misled and told things that were not true about their grant applications, believing that there'd been money budgeted and allocated to them by the previous government, and this proved to be false, and there was absolutely no record of paperwork. This is really appalling and so damaging to the community, and when you hear stories like this, you understand why people do not have much faith in politicians at times. I will never behave in such a cynical way, and I absolutely believe that there must be integrity, transparency and accountability in grant programs such as this, and I don't apologise for that. This is taxpayer money after all. So I'm really pleased that we've received more than 1,600 applications from all over Australia for the Play Our Way grants, and they're being assessed in the way that I think taxpayers would expect them to. I'm so pleased to be part of a government that takes girls and women's sports seriously, takes our responsibility to taxpayers seriously, and I commend this motion to the House. Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker.
I thank the member. The time allotted for this debate has expired. The debate is adjourned and the resumption of the debate will be made in order of the day for the next day of sitting. And I call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move that the Federation Chamber do now adjourn.
Is the motion seconded?
I second the motion.
I thank the member for Kooyong. The question is that the motion be agreed to. All those of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 4 p.m. tomorrow, the 20th of August.